Thanks. That was the intro we needed. Thank you so much.
Little beatbox for you. What happened to the
Yeah,
intro?
that the sound of it caught that. Well, welcome to the Operation Grow Show, intro and all. That wasn't me. I think that was somebody else. Sounded like the world just exited them.
It's my mouth, man.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome to season 4, episode 3. Of course, it's still early on. I can remember these things. Big shout out to everybody who's already started turning up in chat. Smash, Bob Grows, Mason, and welcome everybody onto the show yet again. We've got Tyler, we've got Genetic Memory Farms, we've got Lefty. We hope to have the others will hopefully drop in and join us. Throughout the next hour. I don't think this is going to turn into a 7-hour monster session like last night. Jesus, I woke up a little tequila blurry.
I blame the tequila, Pete.
Oh, it was entertaining.
What did I miss?
Oh no, nothing like that. Hey, 420 MFUK. I hope everybody's doing good. Oh yeah, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. There we go. And just a quick, how's everybody doing? Tyler, how are you, sir?
Baked.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Oh yeah, and without trying to keep harping on about like the success of season 3, but you've just got the orange gasm that you took out.
It's actually didn't get cut out. The kids were being terror. It's going down tonight.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Get some nice pictures of that, and yeah. Let's have a,
So that was what, in like 79 days, Tyler? 78?
I'm at 78 days today. It'll be 79 days tomorrow morning, depending when I chop it. So
nice.
Yeah.
They look good, man. I look really
Yeah.
nice.
Hey, Miss D Nugs,
Yeah.
Purple Thumb, Noob, Cannabis, Glenn. Sorry, I'm just saying hi to everybody else in the chat and whatnot. Lefty, how are you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good. Plants are looking really good. I've been popping a couple of them just to slow them down a little bit. But yeah, everything's going good, man.
Fantastic. And GMF, how are you doing, buddy?
Man, can't complain. I'm alive. I'm above ground. I'm hanging out with y'all. Pretty damn good day in my book. That's the bar I set.
Yeah, it's like any landing you walk away from is a good landing.
And I get to hang out with y'all. So, I mean, that's nice. I didn't get to used to do that before. So I'm digging that.
Any weed you smoke that gets you high is good weed. It's better
definitely weed.
It could be better potentially, but it's good.
That's why your favorite beer is always the one in front of you.
So, on the theme of this month's, well, this season's one with the plant training in that, and I know at least Tyler and Lefty, with you guys growing along so far, in those early stages of the veg cycle, early stage, like mid-veg, early veg, have you started popping and have you started seeing anything? Lefty, you were alluding to that in the intro there, that you've had to start doing a little bit of that, and then have you seen the effect at all? Do you want to talk a bit more about it or say anything more?
Yeah, I've started popping. I started popping 2 of them just because they've starting to grow my space too quick, because we're gonna flower, and I believe we said 3 weeks. I think we said. So I'm trying to just keep things kind of somewhat under control until we flip. So far, they haven't really slowed down a whole lot. They haven't really knuckled or anything like that. It's just, it's just a slight pop.
Okay, yeah.
Anything more than that, you're super cropping your main stalk. So, yeah, but I've just been trying to slow them down a little bit. And they've slowed down just a touch. I gave them a feeding yesterday, so we'll see what happens after they react to that feeding.
Yeah, and then are you back in the auto pots, or
I put them in an auto pots a couple weeks ago. I'm top feeding them. The reservoir is off. I don't know when the reservoir is going to go on.
All right, cool.
But they're in the auto pots. They're in a 50-50 cocoa mix. Cocoa perlite. I went a little bit heavier with the perlite. I think I went like 60-40 last time. I went 50-50 this time. and I put about 1.5 inches of Hydroton in the bottom of my pots.
Nice,
So
nice, nice.
I would
And then
like-
again, that's still on the New Millennium Nutrients.
That is correct. Yep, New Millennium Nutrients. I'm starting off with the CalMag this time. I'm keeping pH rate at 6.3 every time. So just looking for that consistency from start to finish. Yeah.
No, exactly. That'd be good. I mean, and there again, you know, it's removing the variables in terms of trying to be able to understand what's doing what. You only have one that you can then start to play around with again, and then see what effect it has. Nice,
Right.
nice.
Yep.
And yourself, Tyler?
I have de-leafed one of them, monster crop one of them. When I monster crop the one, I like some stems 90 degrees, some stems I kind of snapped and wired back on. There we go.
Some of them 180 degrees.
Pretty much. And pop the stems on one. I've been giving it week 5 feed of New Millennium for about 3 weeks now, though.
Yeah. I mean, again, I actually think the deal with that, you know, the guide on the bottle, my experience with the newts is when you're growing from seedling, at least, that's obviously a little different. Now you've got to go with slightly lighter nutrients at the beginning because it's a young early plant. It isn't an old plant yet. But when you get into taking cuttings, you've got a mature old plant. You know, it doesn't have to it's not pussyfooting around. It doesn't have to go, oh, what the hell is this? So you can hit it with, you know, week 2. Well, it would be just normal feed. I mean, maybe, you know, when the roots get going, after that, it's not a gentle little plant anymore. It's probably been already exposed to intense light while it was on the mother plant. So it's, you know, it is hardened in that regard. So you can certainly get going a lot quicker with them. But yeah, I find, and then just a little bit, again, watch the plants, man. But, you know, usually about half strength to start with anyway, and just you're doing it on every feed. Just, that works.
Yep, every feed.
I started out, I had some really mature clones. They'd been in my cloner for quite some time, so they're pretty big. But yeah, I started out with like week 4. I started right out with like week 4, and just have kind of ramped up from there. I mean, yesterday was the 3rd feed that they've had since they've really been potted. And I gave them week 6 yesterday. Until I see anything adverse, they're just running with it. So.
Yeah, and then you just maintain that, you know, because now it's just that strength for a whole lot longer. In fact, this is, I think, when you get into dealing with clones and that, I mean, then it just becomes, well, look at the ppm. I mean, that's kind of what you're going for. You know, at that point, you're not really worried about what stage of flowering or wherever it is. I mean, it's just like, okay, what's the concentration that I'm giving them that they can handle?
Right.
And then, yeah, what's fun about using DWC at that point is you can get an idea of actually what it's going for. Is it hungry? Is it thirsty? Because you either see, you know, ppms going up or down, and the pH on that changing. And then, of course, GMF, you on the side there with that Swazi puck. That, of course, is the. How is that coming along?
Well, okay.
Swazi.
So the bottom has turned a little darker. You still see the leaf and the vein imprint. So the leaf material is getting darker, but the bud material has definitely started turning brown inside there. I don't know if you can see that.
No, it's too much light coming from the side. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a bit too reflective, but.
Here, let me fix that. 2 seconds.
Don't open it though.
Oh no. So I'll be able to see that a little better.
Is this the water cure method?
It's the. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pete. You run over it.
Cob, but without, you know, the Malawi cob style, but without actually using a cob leaf. It's been packed into the jar, and you used leaves around the side of the jar when you packed it in, and then have created a puck of that. That's been sitting in a water bath, and after the first 24-hour, it was 49 grams. It was 75 grams to start with, 49 grams of water.
29 grams of water came out, so we ended up with 46 grams of actual plant material once the water was taken out. So we lost about an ounce of water. Now it went for another 3 days at 30 C. So it's got till tonight. Then I'll pull it open again, check it real quick. As long as it looks good, then it'll sit at room temp for, I think, like 3 weeks.
Mm.
That's it. And that
Yeah.
hopefully will take a 1-year process, compress it down to a month.
And that'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. I mean, that is going to be, it might become like the new little, like, as I said, that dip that Americans, you guys use, because it's activated. It's just, you got a great little sideline there.
A little pinch in your cheek and go.
Yeah.
Well,
Get you
I'll have to wait and
absolutely.
see. Yeah, it's complete experiment. I have no idea. Pete turned me on to the idea. So then Cascadian and a few other people were nice enough to send me some links to people who'd done it. So I read through their protocols, kind of just followed along with what they were doing. And I understand why they use the corn, like the corn husk. It's the same thing as making tamales. Like it's a level of permeability, but it's not but it is kind of technically waterproof in some areas, but so it doesn't absorb moisture. So once I figured that out, it was just a matter of how do I repeat those processes, but without the use of any kind of like corn cob. So that comes down to a little jelly jar, and then just doing water removal. So when I took that water out, I put it in the refrigerator so it would separate. That way I could see if there were any fats removed, any terpenes, anything like that. Fortunately, there were none. It looks like there maybe was just a little bit of wax that came with it. So I reintroduced that on top of the puck because in a cob, it wouldn't have been able to escape. It wouldn't have, the water would have sweated out instead of coming out, like pouring out. So that was the only reason I reintroduced the waxes. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting once it gets open and starts air curing again.
And then it'd be a nice one. You could do it with, get it working and have it done with different cultivars and see how each one of them cures up. As we were talking about, I can't even remember, was it last night? Jeez, I can't remember, man.
It was a good night last night.
About the, having, cups where it's certainly not about look when you rock up with a stick of cob. Hey, jar appeal isn't really there. You're visiting some specialist websites if that's what you're into for your jar appeal. Then it would be about how that then comes down to your curing technique, how good you are. The cob division is where people are trying out different kind of curing techniques, curing it with different things, blended cures, because of the difference in the reactions that you're going to get that some cultivars will do and others won't. It could be open up a whole interesting.
Well, I think my ambient humidity, from what you were telling me, I think the difference is going to be where these were done natively. There was a different, yes, humidity might have been higher, but there was a lot more wind going on. There was a lot more air movement. Whereas if I just open the jar and let it sit in a room, it doesn't really have air movement to help it exchange like it would in the first couple feet of soil. So I'm still kind of reading on what I think is going to be the best environment for that secondary operation once it's out of the water. But so I think I'm just going to have to do some more reading on the actual place it came from and the kind of environment that they had as far as the next stage of curing. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting, if nothing else, because I teach people and some of them grow outdoors, and they have sometimes a race against mold or whatnot because of where we are. So my hope is if this works well, people will be able to harvest if they have to early or something like that. And it'll still be a very potent thing they can use. And it'll keep it.
Cheers, everyone. Yeah.
At least that's my hope.
No, it could be a very. I'm keen to see how it works. I'd love to try it at some point again when it's legal to do so. Of course, I'll give it a whirl.
And I don't keep secrets. So if anyone wants to know this protocol and stuff after I get it to actually work, I'm not going to put out something that's kind of iffy. So if this works out, I will, write this down and put this out for people to have.
Yeah. So chat, what's everybody up to out there? I mean, let's do the oh, look at that. Hey, and they can hear us this time. Hello. Hello, little person. Oh
Hey,
dear.
Solo.
Hey. Your dad's famous.
Infamous.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? I can't remember.
You
Hey,
were
Um,
asking.
or pop their breeder seeds yet or not yet?
I don't know. I think I know like Jibs has, he's already got something on the go there.
Mystery breeder.
Mystery
Mystery.
Mystery Breeder hasn't popped the seeds yet. They've got to do a timing thing with space
Okay.
and do a little bit of planning on that. But yeah, I expect they'll be doing it in the next week.
No, I
to
know
get
we got
everything lined
people
up.
that are already in middle of projects and starting projects already. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a nice bit. It's a nice, good mix of people at different stages, which keeps it interesting rather than everybody starting at exactly the same point, which is like, okay, so we're all going to have to watch everybody slowly go through this process. Whereas if at least you've got somebody who's further down the line who can be telling you, okay, this is what they're experiencing going and how they're doing it at that stage. So people can pick up at whatever point along the way. That makes sense.
I got stuff I could have picked up, but I wanted to start with something new where I had like from the beginning direction. So yeah, I'll be starting something completely new.
Nice, nice.
I get to
Yeah.
try one of the I get to try one of the others tomorrow. So we'll see how
Okay.
that goes. Yeah. I heard it's panic weed.
Early harvest weed, like, okay, done a day or two or a week early, and now it's like, nah.
Well, I made 2 crosses with the same male, and somebody's tried the one cross and said it was panic weed, and that was grown indoors.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I get to try an outdoor variety grown with the same male. So
Okay.
we'll see. That hasn't been tested yet, as far as I know. The stuff I get to try tomorrow. So we'll see. It's got
Oh,
that,
I know where you're testing that.
yeah, it's got that
Yes.
haze in it. So yeah, it should be interesting. We'll see.
That's probably definitely one of those where it just needs to be left for a little bit longer then. I mean, if it had, the first couple of times people are experimenting with growing it out and it just sounds like, okay, that needs another week, 10 days on it.
Well, I think tomorrow the outdoor got blown over, so it had to come down.
Yeah. Is the outdoor being classified as, ooh, that looks interesting. Is that your deep chunk, whatever it's called? Deep GMF?
This one is PCK by Superdog and then PCK by Biodiesel. So they both come from the same parental lineage or the same father's lineage of PCK, but then they both had different moms. So they're
Okay.
cousins, basically.
Somebody's got Leonardo on
I told you I have a breeding problem. I seriously and this is seeded weed.
Yeah.
It's still very smokable, but that's definitely got seeds in it. So I just got to be careful when I pick them. Fortunately, they all look pretty nice and ripe. So, they're easy to catch. It's not like I'm dealing with these little half ripe, half little white things that are not seeds. So luckily it's easy when they're all really ripe. But yeah, I have a breeding problem. Like I said, I haven't started in on the ones I'm going to use for the project yet, but I already have the only one thing I do keep because I found it and I liked it was the one deep chunk male I have. Other than that, males come, males go. But I kept one deep chunk male, and you said that would be best to use something known like that for the project. So, that's what I'm going to go ahead and use for the project for you. See how the deep chunks do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's why I think. Yeah, I think it's you've. Yeah, well, okay. Remind me again what everybody's doing. Tyler, you're crossing. What were you?
CBD hash plants at Storm Shadow, as well as Storm Shadow to AK-39. I got 2
Okay.
projects going on.
Cool. Lefty, you're doing the.
I haven't said on here what I'm doing yet.
Okay. Still to be announced. GMF, you heard what you were doing there with Deep Chunk and whatever else you're throwing at it.
Bag seed,
Bag seed.
literally, 25-year-old bag seed. That's the hard part for me, because that's where all the work's gonna come in. Is trying to figure out. I got 25-year-old bag seed. What the hell do I have?
Yeah. That's that. But what you have is you
Mystery
have
gold.
shit that ain't adulterated. But you know, landrace seeds or LMCs, that's bag seed. I mean, it isn't over. You know, as we were saying, it's not because it's from a plant that triggered its survival and went, oh shit, let me self-pollinate. It's seed from open pollination, and therefore, you know, really good viable seed. And before all the polyhybrid bullshit kicked off. So I shouldn't say bullshit, you know what I mean, in general sort of
Yeah.
flipping terms.
Well,
The
and I think you're
polyhybrid
right.
muddiness.
I've always kind of had the same philosophy you did. So like I've always used a landrace somewhere in there as one side or the other. That way, if I ever need to go back to it, because I don't have the ability to hold a bunch of stuff. So that's why like it's a commitment for me to hold one male. That's, you know, one of my spots gone technically. So I prefer, if I can, just to keep working down the lines with using a landrace from one side. So when I do need to go back to it, it's something I can find available in the market. You know, like Pakistani Chitral Kush is something you can source, you know, that's fairly clean still. Maybe it's not exactly the same. Or Deep Chunk is another one that if I had to go back to it, I would. Normally I would kill that, but since the project says it should be the exact same one, I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice the slot to keep them.
What are you reading up there, Tyler? The Cannabis Breeders Bible. And the congregation shall open the packet of Rizzlers and proceed to roll. Psalm 69.
Today we
69.
shall read from the book of Randy, and so saith the zigzag.
And it shall be raw and kerned.
And you shall know thine elements.
THC, THCV. Yeah, man, the bush was burning. Oh, we got Oregon grown, you know, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I've been called other things, but yeah, that'll work. I mean, whatever. I ain't picky.
Well, and I should be clear too, just because like I would totally agree with you. Normally, bag seed would not be what I would look at, but this was all saved from stuff that was largely, you know, back in the days of Mexican brickweed and stuff like that. So if I got good brickweed back in the day, that's the beans I saved. I know that sounds crazy.
I mean, this is the point I'm saying about bag seed in terms of it's got to be old stuff, not bag seed from in the last 5 years. No. That's not what you want. You want the shit from when it was not Sensimilia. So you were getting seeded wheat. That's the kind of crap that was going around. And it just wasn't this stuff was being grown out in the fields, open, it got pollinated. Doesn't mean it was bad. And the really nice thing about it is it's unadulterated genetics. And that's what you're after. You want stuff that hasn't been crossed loads and loads of times. You want the original, like as pure as you can get it kind of thing. And that's, you know, Acapulco Gold, you know, if you go ask anybody who was buying it back in the day, it was like, yeah, man, of course it had seeds in it. What do you mean no seeds? You know, it's how it happened. It's how the shit got around. Sure, when we became smarter consumers and said, I'm not paying for the seeds, they figured out, oh, okay, hang on, we've got to not have the seeds in it, or they can get a higher bang for the buck if they're on seeds. And then they started making sure that they stripped the males out. And so you got the introduction of Sensimilia weed into the community. A little bit of a history.
Just another example of cultural
Sensimilia.
practice affecting biology. You know, when we start changing our cultural habits or our cultural practice, like when we stopped, you know, allowing native cultures to regularly burn the areas that they regularly burned back in the day. When we start making cultural changes, it definitely impacts biology. I know from my perspective, that's basically how we mess with yeast. Depending on how you treat them, that's what you get is different expressions. And they're just a hyper fast life form. They're a single celled fungi, but they follow the same, rules and laws that the rest of biology does. So whether you're, stressing it to produce flavors or you're top cropping it, I know there's one place, Arcadia Ales in Michigan, they top crop and they just swipe off the top, just like Yorkshire, what's Sam Smith in Yorkshire. They just wipe the top of the fermenter, and that's the freshest, healthiest yeast for evolution into the next batch. They don't ever actually culture their yeast again. They just keep going, keep going, keep going. So I don't know. I'm kind of excited. This is going to be a long project, but it's going to be very interesting to see what each of the, I don't want to say abuses, but the abuses of our systems, not being outside, not being in natural environment, are going to really make on these plants.
Yeah, I think that the catch. I mean, we're using some fairly generalized terms, and I agree with Oregon, but we do need to be specific. And yes, that's why I'm saying bag seed is. I mean, I'm just back in the day in South Africa. It wouldn't be bag seed; it was handful of seed. I mean, it was a handful of weed. It's not bag weed. It's like, do you want something? Right, here you go. Here's a handful. Take it and go. And I mean, I know all the shit we bought all came with seeds in it, and there was nothing wrong with that. And in fact, that was what it was. But and that was if somebody took a bag of Durban poison, shipped it to the UK or to the US, and then you sit there with your bag of pure landrace Durban poison and bag seed, well, at that point you've got landrace seeds out of a bag of weed. So context and everything becomes a little bit of a gray. Oh, don't you just love the English language? It becomes a little bit of a complex gray area. But open pollination, the point I'm making on that side with it is that it isn't through survival trait self-pollination that's going on. It's males that pollinated them. It isn't in the old days, as I said, you've got to try and lay your hands on stuff that's 20 plus, 15, 20 plus years old. And of course, that's going to get rarer and rarer because the next, in 5 years' time, that's 20, 25 plus year old, 30-year-old seeds that you're trying to lay your hands on. And there is an importance in keeping that side of it going. Do you know what I mean? And keeping those bits, those originals, because once they're lost, they're lost. You can't get them back. It's not possible. Yeah. Yeah, archaeologists in the future finding, oh, look at this. I think I found a seed, a deep chunk.
Gold.
Oh, yeah, frozen like mammoth style.
Wouldn't we act that way though? If we could Jurassic Park over some old seeds that we found, wouldn't we just absolutely lose our shit as a community? To be able to go back, a few hundred to 1,000 years in breeding evolution. I don't know how that would happen, but I know
the original weed plant. I mean, that's what you want. You want like the source.
We would collectively shit ourselves.
And not because it's going to be, and the interesting thing, it'll probably have very little kind of, effect, but it just has the pure juice magic source that eventually became that. And, and you play around with that unadulterated pureness of it all, and that you can just tap into. Yeah. You think you take one of your modern ones and you cross it back with something like that, if it would be possible, if they're not too far apart, but let's say for the sake of argument you could. The hybrid vigor you'd get in that cross would be amazing. We can at least imagine it would be. Fuck it.
I think that's part of the problem is we don't have a lot of historical data on the genome's progress. Like we can point to yeast and say, okay, 100 million years ago, we know the genome doubled from 8 genes to 16 genes. And then we can say there was we can mark all these relative events in its evolution. We don't have anything like that level of science applied to what we're doing.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll, I mean, this is where technology and the advancements of technology and the technology does this and the price just stays level. And if anything starts to come down, I mean, as I say, I think when we can get to home testing DNA fingerprinting, that you can just put a sample in and runs it through, comes back, checks it against a database, or then uploads it if it's new and gives, as long as you've filled in all the details. And then slowly but surely we build up a proper map and understanding of what the relationships are and how many are the same. I mean, how many things are exactly, well, so closely related that they, again, I still think there's loads of strains out there where somebody just forgot what they called it and then just went, yeah, whatever's hot at the moment. Yeah, that's what it is. And there happened to be a bag seed in it. And now someone has got a little line of what they believe to be, the ape that cannot be named number 4. Unfortunately, that's not. It's actually Gary's back garage mistake or something. I don't know.
Let's be honest. It's not like, we're trying to pull from land races. That's why we've been, like you've been looking at land races. Everyone's looking at pulling from different stuff. But the truth is the market just basically is about marketing. It's about the very definition of the word. So it doesn't always matter what it is. It just sometimes matter what it's called. You can take the same product, put it for sale under different names and get the exact same market response, but the marketing could be the factor that changes whether it sells well or not. So I think, unfortunately, just like a lot of other industries, as this becomes more commercially available, it's going to be us consumers who have to be savvy about marketing. It's going to be us, and unfortunately, it seems to be that's what takes the lead, is the cut of the month or the cut of the season, whatever it is. And everyone wants that, and then everyone wants that smashed into something else.
But do you think, in the parallel with the craft market, and even when it comes to and craft, any kind of market that kind of becomes established, is that, hey, Cascadian, is that you can, what drives those actual markets establishing themselves is as the consumer market becomes more educated. And they start to say, actually, constantly chasing the latest flavor, I'm a little bit more, I don't know what's the right word. I want something that's a bit more consistent in terms of, because you never know if the latest flavor is going to be good for you in terms of if this is a medicine and you're using it that way. I mean, if you constantly chasing different whiskeys, eventually you find one that you like, and like, okay, hang on, that's the one I want, and I want to keep going back and getting more of that. And if it's always being changed, you can't do that. Maybe as we get older, we get more set in our ways, and we find we lock on to those are the profiles that I like, and that's what I kind of stick with, anything in that category. But when you're younger and you're still establishing that palate, it's I want all the sweet, latest, greatest, whatever sickly things I can get my hands on. Hey, Rez, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and yourself, Pete, and the crew. Everybody doing?
Yeah, we're all doing good, man.
I ran quick last night because my back was getting ready to go, and when it you don't know what it's going to do, so you grab ice and you lay down, and I was out, man. I was just like, I fell asleep on an ice pack. So, but I'm doing well today. So, but I like the conversation about seed and everybody throwing seed and what they're. Is that part of the grow, or is that just what these guys are doing?
Well, no, it's kind of part of the overall Operation Grow. We've got the sideline of the seed breeding, plant breeding project. Really, the idea there is to take it with the view of doing it as selective breeding, so breeding with an actual end goal in mind. Just so that so that your selection process is kind of driven. It's not just random. You're actually trying to establish some stuff, and that can make it a little bit easier to track the success or the failure of that path. Because at some point you might suddenly realize, hang on, that trait I was trying to follow is now just disappeared. Like, okay, shit, I've got to backtrack to where was it lost in the line and try and figure out now, how do I get it back and keep it going again? Where was the mistake? Which bit did I cross it with that got rid of it? And if that does happen, we talk dominant recessive, you're going, okay, it's possibly a recessive trait and I've just removed it out altogether. So I've now, do I still have the original, did that come from mom or dad? And do I have one of those, do I have original mom and dad lying around still? Because if I do, that's the best way of trying to get it back into what I'm doing. So I do think that grafting as a way of keeping that original parent stock is a way of doing it. At each point along the way, the parent stock that you decide to use, you should create a single graft plant that has both parents on it. So you can always have those points where you could just go back to them. So if you've got limited plant count, instead of 4 plants, it's 2, or you could actually, so long as you label them up correctly, you could essentially have one plant that's got every stage along the way grafted to it. And then you just pick which branch you need to pollinate or clone.
So my question is, how do you keep a plant because like this is one thing I haven't experimented with because I'm always kind of running through stuff. How do you keep one perpetually? Like, would you just leave it under blue light to keep it stunted? Like, how do you actually slow its growth rate to keep it healthy? I've never tried to slow a growth rate on purpose.
24-hour lighting, not overly intense. You don't want to hit the daily DLI. You want to keep it kind of lower than the daily DLI. And you do, if you do 24-hour lighting or do 22 and 2 hours off, just to give it a little bit of a break if you want to. But anytime it's in the dark, it's going to want to shoot. That's when the growth happens, is in the dark, not when the lights are on. It's when the lights are off that they grow. Well, they do most of their growing when the lights are off. And so, yeah. And then obviously a little bit more blue spectrum in the light will also keep them a little bit stacked, but you're not worrying about, the idea here is just to have slow, and you constantly will have to cut it back and trim it and cut it back and trim it. Not where you're trying to create tops, but you're just trying to keep it, cut all the growth back and let it regrow back up and cut it back again and let it regrow. But yeah, you can keep them going for ages that way. You probably need to repot occasionally. I suppose one of the advantages with hydro is you can just wash the roots off and.
Oh yeah, just wash the roots.
Yeah, and then just
repot. You can do that. I mean, you can do that in dirt too, but it takes some time.
Yeah.
And the recovery, the best thing for recovery, that I guess, is probably sunlight. I mean, direct sunlight. If you can do that, you can get a couple hours on it every day. That really does help.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're taking, with chilies, if you want to take one and veg it and take a cutting, root it and get it going again, you've got to stick it under 24-hour lighting. You just don't, it just doesn't bother trying to grow. It just puts out more roots. And, but yeah, that's certainly the best way of keeping them nice and short. And as I said, you've got to watch out. The problem with keeping them going for so long is, and again, I'm just talking from a salt perspective, is nutrient lockout becomes a real problem if you're not careful, because if it's just taking out everything that it wants, it's going to eventually just become a really salt-rich medium. And so you do occasionally have to give it a flush in that. Hey, Raptor.
How's it going, everyone? I'm on mobile this time. I'll be jumping in the shower in a little bit. And I figured I might as well jump on before.
Is that why we're on mobile? Are we going with you?
Yeah. If you want the show, yeah.
Roll up, everybody. This is pay-per-view.
Yeah.
When the red light's on.
So this is the free segment of my OnlyFans, just so you know. This is a promotional ad. Yeah, so I'll be dressing up as Spider-Man this week, and next week it's Superman. So I'm still working out the Batman costume, but yeah, I need to work it out with my tailor.
Good. Oh man.
Well, just remember, with
just
great
keep thinking
genetics
about
comes great
Dragon Fruit Farm.
responsibility.
Hey, you
Uh,
gotta sign up for the OnlyFans first, and then you'll get the rest of the content. But that's just a preview. I mean, yeah. So
dear. Well, we're an open-minded and we like to support all aspects of the community, Raptor. However, you're making your cash.
yeah, I got an elephant thong too. Yeah, that one just came in.
Oh God, somebody's gonna have to
Yeah.
get the mind. Well, that's gonna be you and Tyler. Tyler still has to do the still up for the bikini in the rollerblades.
Yeah. I want a American flag cape for mine, for my segment. And just so that it could be waving amber waves of blue as you see me majestically rollerblade
Down
across
the hill
downhill.
at high speed, screaming, "I can't stop!"
Right into the ocean.
Accident. Oh
Yeah,
dear,
just
oh dear.
take out a toddler on the way. Gotta break somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if they've probably got a pet cat that they've had longer than a kid, and tell you what, making children's unskilled labor, mate. There's nothing
Yeah, I'm sure they
skilled
got
about
more
that.
Facebook photos of their little Chihuahua.
Precisely. Practice makes perfect. Next one will be better.
Yeah. I mean, the first
Can't
one
make an
wasn't
omelet
nice,
without
or-
breaking eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually came back from a dragon fruit farm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like an hour south of me. So that was fun. I got to meet, it's an organic farm. So it was really interesting to see their practices, and basically everything they're doing, I'm doing, other than their soil mix. Their soil mix is basically, just keep in mind, dragon fruit, the fruit itself comes from a cactus, a tropical cactus, and it has this ecological niche where it vines instead of just like growing straight up like a San Pedro or something. So yeah, it needs much different soil media than like what we would put in. We would put in 1/3 aeration, 1/3 peat moss, 1/3 compost. That's just the mix that I use. And what they do is half aeration and half compost.
Dragon
And then-
fruit is something that, to be honest,
No,
I
it
haven't-
doesn't taste. It does
Well,
not
it's
taste
a
good the
fruit
way you get
that's-
it in a store.
It's a fruit that's only coming to like popularity, I would say, in the
Mhm.
last, oh God, actually it's quite a while thinking about it. Maybe
5,
15.
10 years.
I was going to
Yeah.
say
Oh,
15,
15.
20,
You would know
15,
more than that.
20 years is when
Yeah,
I
haven't been
remember
paying
suddenly
attention.
seeing one and it was really weird. Like, what the hell is that? And of course you
Yeah,
cut it
the
open and it's
fuck? Yeah.
pink and white with black dots. And then now, as I've discovered, that means it's not ready yet. It shouldn't.
Yeah,
look
that's
white on the-
actually
It needs to be pink in the middle, doesn't it?
the pink skin and the white inside with the black dots. That's they pick it 3 months earlier, but what you see is actually what you would get in the end result in its maturation. But as far as the flavor, you're not getting, something that was just picked a day or the day of.
The closest I can-
you,
I was going to say the closest I can associate a fruit with it is like prickly pear.
yeah, prickly
It's
pear comes
very
from
sort of
a
similar. It's
cacti.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
desert cactus.
It comes from
but
a different
it's
kind of cactus. That
Mediterranean cactus.
Yeah, it needs a lot less water and it can handle
I picked one up in the grocery store a couple weeks ago after you were talking about them, and a lady walked right
the
up
dragon
to me.
fruit.
Yeah, the dragon.
Uh-huh.
I picked one up in the grocery store after that, and I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, I don't know how to tell it's ripe yet. I haven't looked that up or anything. And the lady walked right up to me. She's like, "You sure you want to buy something to the extent of, I tried that and it has no flavor." And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everyone.
Oh, really?
When they say, "Oh, I don't like buying it because it's like a tease of a kiwi or something like that." When you
Oh.
could just buy a kiwi.
Oh, yeah.
But if you were to get it fresh, I actually bought some fresh ones, and I've never had. The only ones I've ever had were from the grocery store, just like you said. So I bought one straight from the farmer where it's probably within a couple days or a day of being ripe. Like if you didn't pick them, the rats will get them.
Oh,
So I'm very
wow.
excited to try it. Yeah, I caught up. Didn't tell me, the son was the one that picked them. It was a father and son, farming
How
together.
do you slice them?
I like
Cut
doing
off.
it like right down the middle, like, cut through, like horizontally and not vertically.
How do you
But,
cut the
yeah, it's
fruit?
good. You could just cut it in quarters and get them
With
real
that
good.
knife, you muppet. The spoon. You actually
That's what I
get,
was
there's a
thinking.
dragon fruit cutting spoon. And if you don't have one of those, you just like
Interesting.
don't bother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's not
Yeah.
I'm gonna sell
$9.95.
you. I'm gonna sell you
has
back a box of
five,
a box of
uh,
dragon fruit spoons.
5 different knives. 2 of them vibrate.
Yeah.
You get one with every monitoring system, every monitoring system.
Yeah, yeah, every P&L system comes with a dragon fruit spoon.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a
May not be
marketing.
available in all countries.
Yes, use responsibly.
But yeah, I'm
Use
super
with
excited
consent.
about
I
it.
mean, that would be a great one. Yeah, dragon fruit spoon used with consent. Sorry, hang on. What the hell am I
Yeah.
doing with this thing?
Rib for your
Uh,
pleasure. But yeah, I think the variety that I got, the biggest one, I could actually grab it. I'll grab it in a little bit, but it's, from what I've seen of all the varieties, I've looked at the fruits, it's called a Haley's Comet. Actually, I'll grab it. It looks really cool.
Hey, Jibs.
Hey, I have a question for all you experienced growers out there. Has anybody ever used a air conditioner that's a window unit that they say not to use inside, temporarily inside? Is there a specific reason you shouldn't use an air conditioner?
I think it's
Inside
just
the
because of
refrigerator?
the way it circulates the air around. I don't think you're going to have to worry. I mean, do you have the only thing you'd have to worry about is like carbon monoxide, but I don't really think that's necessarily problematic. The reason why you don't want to use them inside is because the warm air gets blasted out the back of it, and the catch is then when you've got it inside, it's just blowing warm air out that it's trying to cool. It's not actually, it's sort of fighting against itself. Whereas if it's venting outside, all the warm air gets blown out the back outdoors, and all the cool air gets blown back in. So I guess that's probably the biggest dilemma. Oh, that's quite a. Hang on a second. Let's put that up there. That's
Yeah,
quite a
yeah,
dragon
yeah.
fruit.
Oh, look at that.
So-
Nice.
Yeah, this variety is called, I'm pretty positive that this is Haley's Comet, just like the bracts. You see these fin kind of looking things? They're called bracts. So the coloration of these bracts kind of gives me a good hint to the Haley's Comet. I also have this variety growing. I have a smaller one and I have a bigger one. So I'm really excited. I paid a little extra for the bigger one. But that just means I'm fine with that. That means I get fruit next year. So I'm super stoked on that. And as you can see right here, they literally have to cut off a piece of the plant because it's not like you can pick an apple. It's attached to the plant. So yeah, pretty fun. I recommend refrigerating them and you'll get like really good flavor out of them. But even if you refrigerate one that's picked 30 days too early, it's not really going to help out much. So to those that live in warmer climates, grow them. I was talking to the dragon fruit farmer and he used to be a avocado farmer and he also does cherimoyas as well. But yeah, so he was telling me that each mature avocado is 250 gallons a week of water. While one of these plants, 1 gallon a week.
Okay, so
of
just
water.
quickly, while we got you here, there's some
Yeah, go
questions that
ahead.
are coming in
Yeah.
from chat. Well, it's actually kind of the same question, I guess, coming in from Richard D and Mr. Bagseed, where Richard D is saying, "You eat that raptor." Now, Richard being, I'm going to cause a lot of
Yeah.
controversy here.
Not the
Being English,
brats.
that's a fruit. What the fuck are you doing with that, mate? It's not deep fried. It's not fish and chips. And it's not boiled.
Yeah.
Only teasing,
He's
Richard.
making fun of the carnivore nature of raptors. But
And
I have
then
fun in the jungle.
Used them on
Mr.
menus
Bags,
before.
and then Mr. Bagseed was wanting to know, what's the taste on it? So what is its flavor profile, considering it doesn't have a flavor in terms of
This
perception?
one. Let me look it up exactly. I haven't tried it yet. Like I mentioned before, I've never had a freshly picked dragon fruit. So these were $7 a pound, but they're organic, and I'm okay with supporting a small farmer. Like the son was selling them. So Haley's comment.
Now, what's interesting, I mean, that is one of those things. Oh, and by the way, everybody, dear old Lefty has issued the statement we'd never think we'd hear somebody say, too much hash in this joint.
Yeah, I saw that.
Could you please return your man card and fuck off?
I'll give you my address. You can send me up to the room.
And I can tell by the slow reaction that there was possibly too much hash in that joint.
What does the next line say?
So,
I can't put on.
And I see. Rez, by the way, the advice from Purple Thumb is box the AC in and vent it out.
Okay, so so they saw what I was doing right there, because that may end up being the room. That was supposed to be the room anyway. And if I take that AC and I can set it up, frame it up all the way up, and I got to finish that wall. So I was just going to put a vent, so when it pushed the pressure, it would naturally go down, and I'm just going to put a moisture tray underneath to see if it catches any moisture. But I was just figuring as long as it pushed out the hole, but I was just kind of I wanted to get an idea if anybody else had done it. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've never, not in this country.
I could have put a second one in the ceiling, if I upgraded the panel, which I was going to do, but I bought the smaller one, so I really don't want to spend the extra $450 when I already spent $350. And I don't think they want to take it back now, but maybe they would. But anyway,
smells like weed. Yeah.
I
want to hand it back, and you got to give me some money for it.
No, it's still in the box, brand new, not used.
It's worth more now that I've returned it with this fine layer of
it would definitely
dry
smell like
cones.
weed. But I was just gonna I can put another one in that vent I was showing, but that was $850 compared to plus wiring. Compared to a $166 Arctic King that's big enough for that room. 5,000 is big enough for my lights, AC, cooling, and it'll probably do some dehumidification in the.
Hang on. The AC unit's going to do a lot of dehumidification. Be aware of that. It's going to rip the humidity out, and you're in the desert already, so yeah, you're going to have fuck all humidity left, mate.
No, I don't have a problem. No. There you go. So there's the thing. If once you learn your environment, now if you move once I move to another room, it'll change a little bit. But that's where you say, I grow in plastic all the time. Now I need to add in 2 felt pots, 2 5-gallon felt pots, or a couple small felt pots. I know I'm going to have to water them more, but they're going to add some humidity. Yeah. And then what happens is that you get flipped and you have too much. And you're like, all right, I take it back. It's still in veg. It's coming out of the felt, going into plastic.
I mean, the thing is, if you're trying to save money and you're trying to be frugal about it in terms of actually smartly managing your environment, what you're saying there is exactly it, Rez. And I mean, and that's part of one of the objectives behind the journaling stuff that I've been putting together and working on was to allow people to actually then gauge that metric and like, okay, so in this size space with these lights and this going on, if I put in 10, 20-gallon plastic pots and I put in 4 25-gallon fabric pots, I mean, there's quite extreme, I guess, fairly big.
Right.
But at that point, it actually, the extra transpiration out of the pot or evaporation out of the pot itself keeps the humidity roughly where it needs to be. And my dehumidifier/humidifiers don't have to work anywhere near as hard. So it's less wear and tear on equipment.
Well, it's not stuff like that, like they say, don't water right before the lights go out because you're going to get more transpiration. Now you don't want the extra moisture. Plus you've got the water in there. And I'm like, but if your moisture goes low and it doesn't drop the way most people do, you might want to water right before.
Yeah, I mean, I debate, the level of transpiration at night is actually. It's okay. Hang on. Let me just rephrase this. I think what a lot of people see is they see the spike in the humidity when the lights have gone off, and they assume it's due to an increased transpiration at night, and it isn't. It's because your temperature tanked. It's not because the humidity went up.
That's some viewpoint.
Yeah, your relative humidity went up because the temperature tanked. If you actually were calculating absolute humidity, it probably hasn't changed at all. And absolute being the amount of water that's currently being held in the air. That value probably wouldn't have changed. What you will see when you use a data logger system is you actually notice about 10-15 minutes before the lights come on, you'll see a spike in humidity, and that's the plants waking up and getting themselves ready to go. And they start transpiring. At that point, the plants have kind of learned what the light cycle is, and they know, okay, we're about to go light, so get yourselves ready. And it's amazing to watch.
So what's the reason for not adding water before the lights go out then, they say?
It's because part of it's because you've just dumped a whole lot of moisture into the room, and now the temperature it's moisture evaporation that's going to occur. It's not like they stop transpiring altogether, but you're not going to increase.
Well, if you live in the middle of the desert, if you live in the middle of the desert in the middle of summer and you live in a hot building, it would be best to water when the lights are going out, because you want that moisture. When that sun starts beating in the window at 110 degrees or 105 degrees.
On the contrary, though, Rez, from what I understand, why they usually say don't water before lights go off, just before lights off, would be that, similar to what Pete was saying, you're adding a lot of moisture into there, and that moisture is going to remain there pretty much whole night, basically encouraging maybe mold and whatnot, as opposed to watering prior to lights on, where the plants will have the whole day to utilize that water.
I guess that would also depend on your air circulation, right?
Yeah.
Most like me, I got high pressure going in, high pressure going out all the time.
Yeah, I don't think that should be as long as you have good air circulation and movement.
I've actually started turning my big fan off, because I think that's part of the reason the tips were drying, was that big fan blowing across the top of the canopy.
Sometimes
and moisture in the morning, it's like, I don't know. It just.
Yeah, the idea is really just trying to keep, and it's because when you water at night, again, the temperature drops, that extra water you've just poured on, a whole bunch of it does evaporate off, and you just add, and usually what you find, and this is a sealed environment, so we're talking growing intense and whatnot, and if you've got a fan that's doing temperature control, for instance, so suddenly at night when the temperature dips, it doesn't kick in and out quite as often. What you really want happening at night is you want your fan controller to be smart and to say, when the lights are on, I'm doing it by temperature. I'm regulating on whatever the temperature happens to be, and I'll try and keep it at an even temperature. And then at night, when the lights go off, it switches into, I'm going to try and keep the humidity down at a certain point and keep it at 65% relative humidity, for instance. So it doesn't worry about what the temperature is. It just tries to keep the humidity down, because in the dark and low temperatures, dew point getting hit and shit like that becomes problematic. And you don't want, the thing is, your fan extracting drops temperature and humidity. So it only does
I
one
don't
or
want
the other.
six,
You
I
gotta
don't
kinda
want
tell it which one to
65
do.
at nighttime. I don't want 65% humidity at dark time.
Well, that would depend on what your temperature was at night. I mean,
Oh yeah, that's true.
you know, again, this whole thing about VPD and a VPD of 1/10 is it's that relationship between temperature and humidity. So as temperature comes down at night, your humidity comes down with it at night. If your temperature doesn't change at night, well, then your humidity doesn't change at night. It stays the same.
Yeah.
The problem Rez and I have living in Southern California is we have huge spikes. Like him more so, it's getting into the triple digits in his area. And so yeah, I can see that happening more often. So it's interesting that he said that you you turned off the bigger fan.
I
You
turned
might
off
want
the
to
top
invest in
fan.
a smaller one and, you know,
All the
still
ones on the
have
floor
some
are still
frost.
moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying, investing in a smaller one and moving that air around a little more in this time of year would probably be better off than like having that big one and you're seeing the damage. Cause I was experiencing the same thing. I had those RH spikes because of my temperature spikes.
Yep.
And I actually bought a nice big fan to circulate more air thinking that was the issue. It was the issue, but I got too big of a fan and I overcompensated and I made a whole nother issue. I compounded the problem. So now I had dry tip leaves and over a high RH. So I did the same thing you did, Rez. I just went full exhaust, like everything's just exhausting. I don't know if I should only speak for myself. What I did is
I have two.
I did
I have
constant
my
exhaust.
floor fans are on. My floor fans stay on. at
Okay,
nighttime.
that's
The
good.
ones I have
I
hooked to
think
the
what
pot,
the best like
That should be good.
aeration system I've seen is the sock that inflatable, like flexible. It's like an air duct, but it's a sock, and it's soft. You can bump into it and whatnot. It's perfect for an agrorum. You can stand on the damn thing; it won't break. And you run them between the plants, and they've got holes cut in it every like 12 inches or 6 inches or whatever you needed the spacing to be.
Like holy shit.
And air blows into it, and so this whole thing inflates, and it blows air up from the ground up through the plants. Now the idea behind doing this is having this updraft stops shit falling on the plant, so your mold and mildews and spores don't. There's an updraft of air the whole time, raising them up through and out. And you're muted,
That's
by the
what I
way,
use.
Raptor.
What's
I
that
use a
thing called?
constant updraft.
Raptor, you're muted.
I want one. What is it?
Yeah, I
Where
was
do
just
buy
about,
that
I
at?
was speaking on what you were saying, Pete, that you have the added benefit of circulating more CO2 with that as well. Because CO2 is heavy, it sinks down to the floor. So you're not whatever CO2 is there, you're not utilizing to its fullest capacity. And
the cooler air is less humid, so you actually then blow less humid air up through the canopy, collecting humidity as it goes. I mean, the hot humid air rises to the top. And again, you reduce the amount of microclimates in the canopy itself that become problematic. If you go and look at any big greenhouse, and I'm talking like commercial vegetable type growers and tomato growers and that, if you look at what they do, they'll have these hot water pipes that run up and down throughout the grow, and they're just there so that they continue warm air being constantly generated at the base, rising up through these things. It's there the whole time.
Yeah, I've seen that system in greenhouses, not like personally, but as I was researching greenhouse technologies, that was one of my end of the semester projects. I actually did a project on how to adapt greenhouse technologies in living spaces.
They're called air socks. Is the thing? It's an air sock, is what you're looking for. Yeah. Fabric ducts.
One reason I like to pull in through, and it doesn't really, you don't have to, but I like to use a directed duct in. So it just goes to a lung room, right? But I run like 6 feet of duct before it goes into a 3x3 tent. All that does is make sure my air is coming in through the bottom only, and then comes up through my canopy to get to the other side of the tent to go out through extraction. So if you've got a controlled space, you can make a especially if it's smaller, it's easier to accomplish that same kind of airflow. That's how I'm able to deal with humidity here, because we get a very big swing in humidity throughout the day and a big swing in temperature. That's one thing about here, it varies greatly. So we always have that problem, and the only way I overcome it is just by making sure I'm bringing in air at the bottom and then out through the top.
That's cool.
What's it called?
An air sock.
sock.
And I mean, and unfortunately on this website, I mean, it's a UK website. It's a very, very small picture. But it's out of stock. But at the end of the day as well, look at that. I mean, it's only 11 quid. Now, how much does ducting normally cost you?
Wow.
More than that.
Yeah.
And listen,
And that's the nice thing about it is it's fabric. So you can stand, you know, in a grow room, you can
clean
stand
it.
on this.
Much easier.
Yeah. You're not going to
You just take it out and put it in the wash.
Aluminium ducting or something solid that if you walk, it's going to trip you up, or if you dent it, it fucks it. Yeah, stand on this shit, it just pops straight
You
back.
know, now that we're on the subject of ducting, I did have an aluminum ducting. I'm saying it the right way, Pete, by the way.
Aluminium.
So
yeah.
I used to have that kind of ducting, and I actually replaced it with what's that one called? That it's really popular, the new exhaust that Rez has. Rez, what's this? The AC Infinity. So I bought the AC Infinity's ducting system, and I like it because you get the added benefit of I noticed that there were 0 light leaks through that exhaust system.
Look at that.
And yeah, I noticed there was less noise as well. Air noise, like yeah, cool.
Oh man.
So yeah, they've got them rigged up underneath all the trays, so they're just blowing up air underneath the trays.
That keeps the roots cooler. That's what I was thinking this whole time.
Or you're giving them air too, like to breathe.
What we don't realize when it comes to, I mean, we all do grow room air movement using fans and whatnot, which is not how you actually do air movement around a place. If you go to a proper ducting, sorry, Tyler, cheers, mate. Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I'm a bad host, my bad. But if you go into and you've got to understand that there's a difference between office ducting and grow room ducting in terms of what you're trying to achieve. An office is trying to achieve this even temperature without you feeling a breeze blowing on the back of your neck. That's not what you want when you've got an office environment. So the way that the HVAC and is that what you call it? HVAC, the centralized air, is done in office, gets the movement, air gets moved in such a way that you don't feel it, but it's still moving air at quite a pace. In a grow room, what you really want to be able to turn around, and these guys can do it, which is the incredible thing with proper ducting, is you say, I want at this height, I need 2 meters a second air movement. And they go, excellent, we'll dial it in. You get your 2 meters a second at this height. And at this height, you want this, and they'll configure it and dial it so you'll get what you want at the heights you're after. When you really want to step up your game, proper ducted airflow, not using fans, because fans on the side of the room don't reach the middle of the room. If you've got fans on the side of the room blowing towards each other, they really don't reach the middle of the room. They have an effective distance, and then it just slowly winds down to almost nothing. And then what you've done is you've blown all this nice, humid, moist air from the outside of the room, and you're just blowing it into the middle. Chances are all your shit starts in the middle of the fucking room, you know, because that's what you're doing.
Put your exhaust in the middle of the room.
Whereas if you've got even the whole way down, running the full lengths of it and blowing air constantly over the tops evenly, you don't have that problem. And the air is not coming, you know, it's coming from box fans that are blowing in, so it's constant supply, bring it in from outside sort of thing. But yeah, that's where you start to really notice this improvement in airflow.
Nice. I heard GMF mentioning a lung room. Could we discuss the benefits and downsides of one? I don't really know too much myself. That's why I asked the question. And I'm
The
sure it's a good
downside
topic.
is space. You lose a room because it's dedicated to one thing only, and it's dedicated to prepping the ambient
Prepping the
air
air.
prior to it going in. So you get that, you regulate the air in that space.
So does
because
it
you
have
don't
to be a
plants.
tent?
It's got to be some. I mean, an ideal lung room
Enough
is something that you
space
can
to
really
prepare,
dial
prep
in
the
and
air.
control, because what you don't have is you don't have plants transpiring into it, so you don't have the, you can regulate the humidity, and it becomes important to use a lung room effectively. You track what's the inside temperature and humidity, what's the lung room temperature and humidity, and what I actually do is I control the lung room up and down in terms of temperature and humidity, and I'm sucking that into this bigger space, and so I'm getting the ratio right allows me to regulate this room and all the, so if I want to lower humidity, I've got to make sure I'm bringing in air that's at a lower humidity than what's in the room, but also I've got to watch temperature. You know, I can't bring in, yeah, it's a careful balance.
Is it worth the space if you have limited space?
If you have limited space, probably not. But if you've
Okay.
got the space, it makes controlling an environment so much
Makes
easier.
it very easier. Okay, that makes sense.
I'm
It
sorry, I'm
fluctuates
gonna have
slower.
to chime in.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
well, GMF, you brought it up, so
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting
I
it.
totally do it, and I totally have a micro space, and it's totally doable. This is like my thing is taking things that, you know, we're home growers. I don't have a ton of space, but I can take every single one of these principles and turn them into something I can use. So what I do for a lung room is I use a separate 3x3 tent. That tent is now the lung room. So I duct through a 90-degree angle with solid aluminum tubing. And again, I know you bought the fancy stuff, but I'm cheap as fuck. So I buy the, you know, cheap.
It was $5 more, and I don't get light leaks.
I don't get light leaks either. I buy the solid aluminum stuff from the hardware store, so I can bend it how I want it. If I do really think, I mean, I test it for light to see if I get light reflection through the 8 feet that it goes through a 90, but I don't. And then I run it to another 3x3 tent. Then if I want to, I condition the air in that 3x3 tent. I can use it for holding clones. If I want to turn the, you know, moisture up or something like that, I can.
So you got more of a solid ducting.
Yes, I always use solid.
Like professional ducting, not this
well, cheap hardware
scrunchy
ducting
stuff.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's like it's solid. So
that's what I meant. That it's just more robust than like stuff
so
that costs a little less.
Yeah, it's cheap though. It's still dirt cheap. Like it's not fabric.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not,
I agree.
You know, but it's dirt cheap. So that's literally what I use, and then I just treat one tent if I need control for some reason. That other 3x3 is easy. That's why I like to use small spaces.
Now, I will say that what you're talking, okay, so in a legal state, 3x3, an extra bit of 3x3 space is, in some people's grows, that's a luxury. That's all you've got. And if that's all you've got, then you're going to struggle. Now, I will say one thing you can do with a small space in support of, you know, how do I try and use a lung room in a very small environment is you conduct your air from your veg grow into your flowering area. And this is what you can use for temperature regulation, because you can bring in the warm air from, and especially in the summer, I mean, the winter time, not so much in the summer, but in the winter, you can use the warm air that you're generating in your veg tent, which is on a much longer lighting cycle. So there's going to be a little bit of a cut over where the veg isn't on maybe when the both tents are off, but you still have that luxury of being able to keep the flowering chamber warm by utilizing the warm air coming out of the veg tent. So setting those up a little bit closer.
Everyone I've helped set up for the most part has been in their house. So for them, they're treating their home as the lung room.
Yeah.
So when they know their lights are going to go up, like that's what I do. My home is my lung room. My dogs make my CO2. I make my CO2. You know, because I need it to be still livable for everyone. We still have to control the temperature in the house. So, you know, we're already spending the resources doing that anyway. So I always encourage people, use your, even if you're, I had one dude who wanted to use his attached garage. And so we cut holes in his kitchen wall to create a pass through so he could seal a tent in his garage, but bring the air from the house in and out. And that's how we regulated it for him.
Damn legal states.
So I'm just saying, we got all kinds.
Like it never happened. Like it never happened, man. Don't worry about it. I got you. I know it's a rental, but bro, got
Yeah.
you.
It's cool, dude. It's cool, man. They'll never see this.
Well, you can just patch it. Say you got you got no argument.
What was
you
the
made a hole,
poster they
you patched
used
it.
in is it Shawshank Redemption, where they got a poster hanging over the wall? Yeah. My friend Andy Dufresne, my friend genetic memory file told me.
Yeah, there's a million different ways you can do that, though. You know, there's no reason you can't use the same ideas that these big guys use. You just have to, like, so we do it in brewing all the time. You just have to figure a way to scale it down and do the math, which is 9 times out of 10 the part that people skip. You do the math on your CFMs and, you know, what you're moving and what you're regulating. This is one reason, like, I like the idea of getting more knowledge about what the environment actually is, because right now I'm just shooting from the hip using, you know, less than accurate sensors. But it does work for all practical purposes on a very small scale.
So I have a question on top of my question. So we'll use GMF's setup for as the example. He has a 3x3 tent that he grows in, and he was saying that he uses a 3x3 tent as a lung room. Is that the bare minimum space that you need for a lung room of a size of that size?
How big of an exhaust fan does he have?
Depend on what your air movement was, how much you.
That's another thing. I run a 6-inch can fan max, so it's got, you know, a low, medium, high, and so I will typically during the day, and I've owned this thing for years, so mine's old school. I'll probably have to replace it in the future. I don't know, but during the day I'll crank it up to 3, and I'll vent through the front of the tent to create additional airflow up through the bottom and in through the canopy by using the bottom layer of the tent. I'll prop that open while leaving the front sealed, and that'll create airflow up through the bottom of the canopy, along with what's coming through the duct. So when it comes time for lights out, I just drop it to 1 and seal the rest of the tent.
Now, I also run on a 3x3, and I run the AC Infinity, the T4, the programmable T4. And what I have to do is it's in a very large space in the basement in the house. But what I have to do, because it pulls so much negative pressure, even at the setting I have to have it out to, because I also have a carbon filter on it, to be able to move the heat out and everything, it creates a negative pressure. So I use all passive air. I don't do anything sealed. I basically just open up the side. I run a 6-inch duct right out the side of my tent. I put like a sock or nylon or something black over it, just so you don't get a light leak. And then I just vent it back out into my space. I mean, it goes right back out into my lung room. And the temperature in there stays probably a little bit warmer than the rest of the house. But I mean, you're still bringing in, 70-degree air into that tent, and it's just a constant flow. But yeah, I always run passive, and I always just, use one of them openings in the bottom. And I've actually put like a 4-inch fan bringing in air from a lung room, just because the tent creates so much negative pressure because you have to remove heat from lights and stuff like that. And I always have to run a carbon filter, so I want that air moving, you know what I mean? Just to keep everything in there clean and just clean.
Yeah. I should say I run a carbon filter too, and I do one other thing because the tent sucks in a little bit, especially at night. I drop PVC. I have a PVC tarp that it's mounted over the tent. So when it closes up at night and it draws in a little bit, I just drop this additional screen over the front of it. That way, if there is a light leak somewhere on the zipper or something like that, it's not an issue.
Yeah.
Now, I do know, like, for instance, the Mystery Grower has a grow space that's a 1 cubic meter, and the veg area that vents straight into it is about 1/4 of a cubic meter, and that runs as the flowering space's lung room, essentially. And even at that small scale, I can show you where the impact is. This is where a light in the veg room was turned off because it was getting too warm in there. And So if you look, this is when the light in the lung room, the extra light in the lung room was on. The flower room is maintaining this 24-degree temperature. Okay, this is where doors get open and things. I was mucking around with some stuff. Well, they were mucking around with some stuff, I should say. And then the lung room gets turned off. That light comes off, and the temperature just, I mean, it drops all the way down to 19. So that small little space is actually got enough warm air coming out of it to keep the flower room at a constant 24 degrees. This is 3 days, and it doesn't really drift from it. It'll stay at 24 degrees the whole time. Lights on, lights off. It's got fans kicking in and out to regulate the exhaust temperature, which is through carbon filters and whatnot. And the humidity doesn't really, but it bounces around between 72 and 60% humidity. It's not overly humid. And the VPD is, pretty much spot on. But that's, you can use a really small space to do it as well. And that's a small space that's got other plants growing in it. But you can, it is, and it makes a big difference. It really does help to regulate that other space. It's easier. You just don't have this plant material constantly adding crap into it. It's like, Christ, it's so difficult to maintain that. But again, on the question of the bigger the lung room, the better. It's easier to keep a very large space at a constant than to keep a small little space at a constant temperature. Because when your fan kicks in, it just drains that entire small space. And now suddenly everything's been replaced and you've got to try and keep up with it. Whereas if it's a big, big room, fan kicks in, maybe you dump a quarter of the room through. So, all the new fresh air that comes in mixes it. You don't have this huge dip in the lung room's temperature and humidity variable or values.
In lights out right now, I'm running on one end of the room at 73 and 47% humidity. On the other end of the room, it's 74 and 49.
See, 74, 49. I'm trying to know what that is in Celsius, and it's not working.
I don't know.
Although actually, maybe we can.
What temperature do you need?
No, well, I've got
73.
Let's see. VPD calculator.
73 is going to be like 25.
32.
No. It's going to be
25.
Like 25.
Yeah, 25 degrees. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to do the math in my head. I'm sorry.
What, 72 did you say it was at?
73 and 74.
73.
It fluctuates like crazy. It's hard in the desert, man.
And what humidity? 40 something.
47 and 48.
Yeah, I mean at night.
What?
I would probably see. The thing is, you could actually bring the humidity up to like 60%, and you'd still be good. At that temperature, you could bring it up to 60% humidity, and then during the day, if lights on, what temperature do you hit?
86. 80. I run 84 and 86.
So with that, your humidity.
I don't run no 80% humidity.
No, if you were at 86 Fahrenheit, you would want to be around 75% humidity is what you'd want at that temperature. But in the middle of the desert, but this is the thing. I mean, it messes with people when you play around with VPD. It goes. This is the conflict of bro science versus science in terms of this comes with a few caveats, and that's the difference with the science. But it goes, okay, so this with the following assumptions, you've got good airflow, boom, 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 then this is what you want to do. If you've got shit airflow, I would say, yeah, you probably want to avoid this. So if you can't. Look, if you keep it at 86 degrees and 76% humidity, day and night with no change, then you'll grow the most amazing plants. But I'm saying if they set it constantly, lights on, lights off, that value does not change. You'll grow amazing fucking plants. They'll be the best thing, healthy, huge plants. But the problem you have is the lights go off, your temperature tanks, your humidity is at 76. So suddenly your temperature drops by 15, 20 degrees and whoom, you're in dew point. We can't control it that well. I mean, I see sealed room environments where they do control it that well. And yeah, temperature and humidity are constant. They never vary. They just sit there and they go the whole way through.
Well, typically in the summertime, I was having a hard time. I mean, when lights went out in the summertime, I was running 86 to 90 with the lights out, but not being able to keep it any higher than 50 and 60% humidity. And they did fine. I mean, they did fine. But here's the thing.
Well, that's it. I mean, you've now got selected strains
does
for that environment.
Is VPD relative to elevation?
No.
Elevation change things? No.
Mm-mm.
Are you sure?
It's purely a relationship between temperature and relative humidity.
Yeah, I will say, Rez, that the altitude does change temperature. So maybe that's what you're kind of associating. But
no,
in terms of VPD, yeah, in terms of VPD, it's strictly measuring humidity and temperature.
Yeah, current relative humidity. And what it is, it's the vapor pressure deficit between the 100% humidity that exists within inside the stomata and the humidity of the environment outside. Now, why this becomes important is for gaseous exchange, and why already high VPD is not what you ideally want. And this is why you need to ramp the humidity up, because the high humidity slows down the gaseous exchange. So what you have is your stomata, which open up. It's really low humidity outside. It's 100% humidity in that stomata. And what happens with gas in terms of Brownian motion, et cetera, is it tries to reach an equilibrium. I'm trying to balance my environment. So the moisture within this high moisture content in the stomata is just rushing out into the rest of the environment because it's 100% here. It's 40% there. There's a huge difference. And the difference is I'm trying to raise the humidity outside the room to be the same as me. I'm trying to reach equilibrium. That's how all of these gaseous exchanges work, or liquid exchange works. It's trying to find an equilibrium in concentration. And because the humidity is so low, the pressure coming out of that stomata is so high that there is very little chance of CO2 and other gases to make it back into the stomata, which the plant requires for photosynthesis, etc. So when
so why then outside does a plant grow
because each plant has a specific
100 degrees and 8% humidity, and
because that's it's okay. So for that plant, its optimal photosynthetic temperature is this, and humidity for it is, look, VPD for the optimal VPD for desert cactus is very different to the optimal VPD for a tropical orchid. These are two different things. They have cannabis's optimal VPD happens to be around 1/10. So, and that satisfies a huge category of plants. I mean, the vast majority of plants exist within that sort of VPD 1 hectopascal, well, 10 hectopascals, 1 kilopascal range is sort of about 80-90% of the plants on the planet fit within that category. The outliers are your extreme desert plants, high living rocky altitude plants, some, where it's very extreme conditions, middle of the rainforest plants where it's super high humidity and super high temp. But actually you'll find those will be the ones that'll be sitting at a 1 or a 10 because it's 30 degrees Celsius and it's 90% humidity. And they go, yeah, okay, that's perfect for me. Thanks. And the reason why is because the, that temperature, the gaseous exchange is still optimal, and the plant's able to get gas out and get fresh air back into it. You know, and when you're saying, oh, and again, when the temperature gets high, what it'll start to do is it starts to shut that. If it gets too dry, the stomata closes up because the plant thinks, fuck, I'm just going to dehydrate here. I can't keep this up. The potential is too great. I'm just going to hand it all out. So shuts itself down. And again, now you don't have any gaseous exchange. Your growth will start to deteriorate. It's all about just being really careful but it's air movement. Environment is everything.
Well, you saw the ones I had outside, and they're doing pretty good. And some major swings, different than the indoors. I mean, it's 95 one day, 81 the next day, 50% humidity one night, 32 the next night, 23 outside, and then 8. I mean, it's crazy. It's just like it, you know. And I haven't seen a real. I mean, I've only seen it look good. That's why I just go. It's got to be something more than. I think it's super airflow. I mean, you know, I heard some other guys talking in Southern California. I mean, you know, this is on my second go, so I'm not saying that this is definite, but man, definitely major airflow, fresh air, not just fresh air seems to be.
Yeah. And it's one of those things I see with CO2 growth where people supplementing with CO2 is like, oh, I can run it hotter and I can give it more light. But you go, yeah, you've also got to bump that humidity up when you're running it hotter. Because if you don't, again, as I go back to this, it's a tiny little gap that you've super saturated the atmosphere outside of it with CO2. Actually, that plant is just getting pretty much the same amount of CO2 it did when you weren't supplementing with light, you know, with extra CO2 and crank the heat up and crank the lights up. When you were running it a little bit cooler, slightly lower wattage light, and the plant was much healthier in terms of this is my optimal environment to be in. I'm not being stressed. I'm not having to transpire too heavily. Maybe it's a little bit warmer than I want it to be, but I can. That's where the extra CO2 helps, is that extra heat, but it's got to be able to take in the extra CO2. So keep the humidity up.
Okay, so we talked about VPT. If you push the LEDs, that's like I said, that's where I've always had the problem with the tip burn, is when I drop them down to the height they say they should be, right? But if my humidity, when they were up here, they were fine, but when they came down here, tip burn. So what that's telling me is up there, it didn't need that much humidity.
That's not to do with the tip burn's not to do with humidity though. The tip burn's to do with the. I think we have a man down, raptor down.
It's nutrients, man. It's pushing the damn nutrients. I know.
I mean, think about this outside. You know, with the bright sunshine, there's no difference between 6 feet away and ground level. The intensity is the same. What you've done with the LED, though, is you've actually just brought the intensity. There is a big difference in light. I don't know if I can, actually. I don't think I can. No, I can't do it. Shit, guy.
Is he sleeping?
10-4, man down.
He's sleeping, man. He's sleeping.
Yo,
okay, let's all take a mind. Raptor took over the rabbit hole last night.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. He held on.
Yeah, Raptor ran the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And he was up earlier going out doing something. So he's like, that's cool.
Yeah. And then he's gonna be on Fumi's later.
That's real TV there.
He's gonna be sleeping on Fumi's later. You mean?
Yeah, man. That's actually why I left y'all yesterday and switched to my phone and fell asleep while.
Did you get him deleted so he's not on the internet for the rest of it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I turned his video off. Shame. We don't need to let him. Everybody, we don't all need to watch him sleep. The raptor hole. Yeah.
He goes bye-bye.
Eject. Saying what we were talking about with the VPD thing.
Because I was just gonna ask Raptor if it would have been a good idea, like how he's into mushrooms and things. If it would have been a good idea to like have mushrooms in one tent and take that air into your grow tent.
Yes, it is. And that's a really good way of introducing the natural CO2 just ramping up just ever so slightly the elevated
Mhm.
normal CO2. And again, if you're growing, doing my, my CDM or growing mushrooms, you get the little totes. What's easier to trying
Yeah.
to control the environment in the little totes really difficult. But if you put all of the totes in a tent, your lung room, and control the overall tent, it's much easier to do it that way.
Yeah, actually, I've seen it done in a couple of
back.
different
He's
ways.
alive.
He's awake.
Sorry, I turned your
Yeah,
video off,
yeah.
Raptor. You
Yeah, I
didn't-
was bobbing and weaving. I had a late night, fucking talking shit with Eagle, and then
Yeah, we
yeah.
talked about
But
taking
yeah,
the
you can.
rifle.
Yeah, you can totally do exactly that. I've talked to different people that have been, because I asked that same question, and I've been actually bringing that up when people ask me about mushrooms to use as supplemental CO2.
Mm.
And what
Home
my
brewing?
friend who has some actual like 15 years working with monotubs and all that stuff, he's found that monotubs are easier for him because I mean, this doesn't really work for the automation part of this all, but it's so simple the way you go about cultivating mushrooms. When you use a monotub, you lift up the lid and you spray water like from a spray bottle, not on top of the substrate, and you never pour water on your substrate. You spray it over on almost like an arch. You spray up into the air, and you can use your lid or some, whatever Chinese fan, that you have lying around because you were working late last night. You can just, yeah, sorry. I got the notification. But you can fan and mist, and that's when you spray the water bottle up in the air, just like I mentioned before, and you fan downward. So that way it's getting the moisture without you pouring water. And the dangers of pouring the water on it is you can get too much moisture and invite contamination. So the huh?
Perfect. I mean, and the analogy that the similarity with you talking about is what I was mentioning last night about using
You don't want
fogger
a waterfall.
humidifiers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the
yeah.
fogger.
And
that's
it's the same.
so-
You're running into the same problem. What you try, and this is why evaporative cooling, because what that actually does is that humidifies the air. It evaporates into the air. You don't get these water droplets in the air. The air is just holding the maximum amount of water it can hold, which is all that you're trying to do. And when you're using a heavy fogger, if you can duct it, if you can blast that fog through a
you're condensing water droplets instead of having the water molecules floating around in air.
Yeah, you want it to be evaporated into the air. You want to move, if you move your hand through it, you don't want anything collecting on your hand. If you stick your hand in front, if you put your hand over there and you can't see it because you've got a cloud in your grow room, ask any outdoor grower, do you like it when the mist rolls through your outdoor grow? And they go, no, that's a bad thing when the mist starts rolling through, because that's when bud rot sets in. You don't want to have, they're fine to use, but I advise people to almost put a ducting pipe over it, blow it straight up. So by the time it comes out the top, it's just 100% humidity air, and it can just drop down, and you can blow that down into the bottom of your room, for example. Although I would actually advise introducing it at the bottom and letting it go up, because as it comes down and cools off, it goes from 100 to 110, 120% humidity. And so it all just starts to condense out. You want to introduce the humid air low down, because as it rises up and warms up, it becomes less humid. You don't want it going the other way. You don't want to introduce hot, humid air. You want to introduce cold, humid air.
Yeah. And just to get back to the whole whether you'd want tent or monotubs, if you're not around in your, we'll call it the grow room, you'll have your mushroom tent and you have your plant tent and you're using your mushroom tent as a CO2, almost like a CO2 emitter. It's its own lung room with the added benefit of having CO2 emission. So I think the automation route is a good route. I haven't tried it though, so I can't recommend this. I can only say what I've been looking into. I like the automated route where you have I like the comment Pete made with using, instead of a fogger, an evaporative cooler. All the examples I've seen using it in a tent, for a mushroom tent, it's a fogging, you get all of these, it's almost like if you were sick and you had a humidifier in your room, that's the kind of humidification I would see in these rooms that people would use. But I always had that thought of like, yeah, but if I was to touch that wall, it would be soaked. It would be absolutely soaked. And most of that water is on the surface instead of in the air, which is what the mushrooms want. They want basically like in the 90% of humidity. Now, yeah, I would say you could still have monotubs in there in the tent and have it regulating it and everything, and have the added benefit of stacking things as well, and having like almost an extra layer of protection against contamination as well. So there is that, but here's the thing. If we have 90% humidity in one room and it's exhausting into the other room with that 90% humidity, what's the result of that? Like that's been my dilemma with me thinking about using a tent and exhausting it directly into the plant growing tent, because you're putting in 90% humidified air.
Depends on what
Would that be an issue?
What temperature is that air? That's the big thing. So let's say if you're
okay,
what's the optimal temperature for growing mushrooms at? They usually like it a little cooler, actually. They don't really like it particularly hot. So 90% at, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius.
I think lefties.
Sorry, Lefty. Go. Sorry, Lefty. You're muted.
Was it Duckweed speaking?
You're muted, buddy.
Yeah.
Lefty's trying to talk.
Yeah.
I gotta get. You guys have a good week. Nice seeing everybody. Be safe.
Hey, sorry, man. I'm
Yeah.
It'll be good, dude.
Have a good week.
Yeah, blame the G4.
Take care, guys.
Catch you later, dude.
I did not.
Stay safe.
I did not make any coffee, and I got like 3 hours of sleep. So I'm not too surprised. I took a little cat nap, a little raptor nap.
Self-care, man. Self-care.
Yeah. I should have just.
So that really is going to be the big determinant. I mean, and that's the whole thing. Is if it's
the temperature.
If it's cool, humid
Cool
air, it'll be dry, warm air. In relatively speaking, because it is relative humidity.
So in what my the way I'm considering growing, which I'm not even considering, I'm for sure going to do it for mushrooms, is I am going to grow with the seasons. There are mushrooms that grow in cooler climates, and there are also mushrooms that grow in tropical climates. I don't have the luxury of using an air conditioning unit to bring, to adapt my climate to what it needs to be for everything. So that's why I'm using different kinds of mushrooms to make up for that. But it just seems like it all comes down to airflow in the end. As long as I have airflow and it's not too crazy of spikes, I think it seems like it can be done. I just wanted to
airflow
ask
actually helps
that
reduce
on the panel.
Airflow helps reduce those spikes, oddly enough. I mean, it really it helps to make them more gradual. They're not like like this
not
sudden
spikes.
cliff.
It's more of an ebb.
Yeah,
flow.
what you're trying to avoid is that going off the cliff. That it just drops. So lights out, the temperature you have when your lights are on to when your lights are out, if that's a 45-minute gradient between those two, it kind of gives the environment enough time to chill on the if chill on the transpiration so that you don't get the spike in humidity. Everything just gradually winds itself down properly. That's part of the advantage to an early red pulse. Shut down, go to sleep. The lights are still on, get ready to go to sleep. They start to get themselves prepared. Their transpiration will slow down. One of the advantages about like venting your mushroom tent, or if you're home brewing and you're doing a lot of fermentation and you're doing all of that, let's say you've got all of your fermentation taking place in the tent and you vent
Ton of a
all of
CO2 that way.
air in.
Yeah.
The point being exactly is it's CO2 rich air. So actually in your grow room, you're thinking, oh, fuck, I'm bringing 90% humidity air in. But hang on, it's really CO2 rich air. I can raise the temperature even higher in my grow room now and still keep it at 70, 65% humidity, but I can raise, because the way I can handle this 90% humidity air coming in is I raise the temperature here, and that's suddenly not a problem anymore. That 90% humidity is 50% humidity all of a sudden. And the extra CO2. So the plants are really looking into this now.
Wow, so that drastic of 40 to, or 90 to 50, so 40%.
Yeah, it's
interval.
amazing what the different what's it? For every 5 degrees Celsius, it's like 10-15% humidity. It's a
Wow.
significant amount. I mean, it really is. It fluctuates pretty heavily.
So thank you so much for answering that and clarifying. You now, for anyone who is considering a tent to do exactly what we were talking about, what I like about mushrooms is if let's say you have a 4x4 tent that you're going to be using for this, it doesn't all have to be on the floor like with plants. Like there's no real height restriction. You can put it on shelves. So you have a 4x4 tent, use 3 walls or 2 walls, and those 2 walls are gonna be your shelving units. And you can, depending on how much substrate you're using, I recommend colonizing in a monotub and then taking it, typically when you colonize within a monotub, you're using a plastic sheet, so like a trash bag, and that's to stop side pinning. So you want all of your mushroom fruiting bodies to come up from the middle of the substrate and not through the sides, and that will make them, make them larger. I don't know about, what's it called?
And it would be a shame of me not to plug
Yeah.
Tanasi Gardens and his sacred mushrooms. So
Yeah, so what
Sacred
he
mushrooms follow
uses
him.
is a mini monotub.
In fact,
So just
Lefty's
when-
been using some of his kits and has been very, very happy with them.
Yeah, I recommend that if you're kind of on the fence about getting into mycology. It seems like he does a great job of setting everything up for you and giving you everything you need in the kit. Something I want to I don't want to dismay him, but I would love to have a conversation to see what kind of grains he used. I know that he uses corn. I just am interested in his sourcing, because if his source is not organic, I don't recommend that at all. But if he is using
I was there when he
organic,
was. I mean, I've been there when he was making them. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I do believe it is. I mean, he was quite particular about the whole thing.
yeah. Like when I think of Tanasi, I don't think that he's getting not conventional corn. I kind of figured that he would be getting organic, but like I said, I need to have this conversation with him. But whenever people ask me, oh, about that, I just say careful and ask them about those grains, because I will never recommend that somebody uses non-organic grains, especially corn. That's one of the most fucking filthy things in agriculture that comes out of a field. So yeah, I think they use like 18 or like 20 pesticides on corn. It's ridiculous. So yeah, if you are going to use corn, make sure it's organic, so that, just keep in mind this stuff is going in your body, and mushrooms uptake everything.
Yeah.
There's
Like
this whole
cannabis, which is
mycoremediation.
a heavy metal uptaker. You know, you got to be a little bit careful.
Yeah. So that's why I say for everyone, be careful and talk to your supplier. In this case, Tanasi, and he seems like a very straightforward, good businessman. I don't think that he wouldn't use non-organic grains, because even Paul Stamets, which he follows very closely and quotes, says that don't use non-organic grains. It's not going to end up good for you. They uptake everything. So that's one of the dirty little things about it. But yeah, it seems like a great product. If you
and
like
I'll
I
vouch
mentioned
for him. I
before,
mean, I'll vouch for the individual at a personal level. Yeah, really nice guy. And
yeah, he seems
I
like
know
a
a lot of
stand-up
people
guy.
who've used his kits, and yeah, he takes a lot of pride in them. So absolutely go
Good.
for
Yeah,
it.
I wouldn't
I'm not
expect
gonna.
him to use anything but organic, like I mentioned before, from what I see from his grows and how
And
his
he's on the
dogs
Embracing
look. His
Organic
dogs look
show. It
really
would be a
healthy.
little.
Yeah, he's on the EO show, so I'm like, man, if you're not using it, at least organic corn, which is the cheapest fucking grain. So yeah, as far as corn in terms of the best grain, I wouldn't call it the best grain, but it's definitely the most affordable. So I totally understand him using it. If you are doing stuff like this stuff on your own, there's other smaller grains that are less prone to contamination. But if you follow the directions and do everything correctly, like he says, contamination should not be an issue. Just follow the directions and it should be very straightforward. Yeah, I really like what he's doing. He's making it all more accessible to the masses. And I've heard a lot of people who have gotten it, and as soon as they got it, they put in their spores and it started working right away. They started colonizing right away. So right on, Tanazi. That's really cool. I'm glad that you're giving so many people a successful first grow for mushrooms, because that's the biggest thing, that you can very easily fuck it up. And no one wants to go back to something they fucked up. It's like, oh, great, now I got to do that.
The one thing
So
I've never come across is anybody who's. I mean, it'll be an interesting one in terms of like the mushroom cultivation. I mean, I know lots of people who cultivate mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, and otherwise, but there are some that just seem to prove to be almost impossible to cultivate wild. No, not to mess up, but
okay.
wild. In England, you get the Liberty Cap, which is the psychedelic mushroom. Yeah, really nice, really awesome kick to it. That's the one where they look really innocent, but Jesus, be careful.
Yeah, they're very small.
They got
I haven't tried. I've yet to try one yet, but yeah.
Well, I mean, one by
potent.
itself is not so much, but I mean, the best I had was I picked 1,000 of them on a school rugby field. I was walking across it with an girlfriend at the time, and looking down and went, hey, those look like, hang on a second, pick a whole bunch of them, go home, check them out, and yep, that's what those are. Quick, back in the car. And then sat down with the friends.
Where are you going, honey? Late night study session, Mom.
So I mean,
this isn't college.
Yeah. I mean, for people living in England, I was at university in Cornwall. I mean, at university in Portsmouth. This was done in Cornwall, and I was down there for a weekend. parked at the girlfriend's place, picked all these mushrooms, got back to uni, walked in with like a bag of like 1,000 mushrooms, and like, cool, let's make tea. Put on Yellow Submarine, the Beatles movie, made up a pot of tea with about 500 of these fucking mushrooms in it, and the three of us just sat there and did shots of mushroom tea. Got fucked up. We were doing, and in Portsmouth they have a war memorial, which is probably, I shouldn't be saying this, but these amazing flower beds, and we were doing flower bed angels, like snow angels at 2:00 in the morning, having finally figured out how to get out of the flat and down the road.
It's interesting that you brought up mushroom tea. For some people, a lot of the most common comment I hear from people is like, oh, I don't like the flavor, I don't like the taste of it in my mouth, but most of all, I don't like that I get an upset stomach over it.
I found a bit of, I make it with the cinnamon stick, some honey, the taste of the mushroom.
Oh no, I'm talking about if you were to just eat the whole mushroom and just like chew on it, like gnaw on it and then swallow it. That's what they don't like. So to have the tea, they can withstand like that flavor as long as they don't have to like basically chew on it. Yeah.
A way to eat mushrooms, which works really well, we used to do it on the way to the clubs, was stop off at a pie shop, get a pie, and you just pop the lid off the pie, take your mushrooms, have them all ground up, throw them into the pie, put the lid back on the pie, and then just eat it, because you couldn't taste the mushrooms if you had like a chicken curry pie or something like that. You couldn't taste the mushrooms.
Okay, like a meat pie. Gotcha.
Yeah, and the nice thing was you actually got something to eat as well, because for the next 8 hours you ain't eating jack shit.
You'd be lucky if you can like put the food up to your mouth, like, and not hit your eye or something like that.
I haven't seen the acid, but have you guys seen the dragons in the kitchen? It's like one of those scenarios. And then you'd hit the club, and by the time you hit the club, you'd had a nice little meal, and the mushrooms would be kicking in just as you got to the club. And then
it's I like that you brought that up. The last time I had mushrooms, gosh, I think I was like 23, so like 7 years ago. I put it on pizza.
Yeah.
And I didn't get any of that disgusting flavor.
No.
It was crazy. All the fat.
Go to Cambodia, dude. You can order a happy pizza that comes with opium-loaded crust and magic mushrooms.
Oh, damn.
They don't fuck around, dude.
Yeah.
Sounds like you won't believe in
Vietnam as well.
Sorry?
I heard is that in Vietnam as well? You can order a weed pizza?
There are parts of Vietnam you can do it, but my brother lives in Saigon, has been there for the last 10, 15 years or so, and travels out into Cambodia and does all of those. And the stories you hear about, rock up in Cambodia and you see on the menu, there's something called a happy pizza. And you go, what's in the happy pizza? Well, it's 2 ounces of weed, magic mushrooms, and an opium crust. Like, okay, cool. We'll have 2, it's a whole different lawless part of the world.
Going into mushrooms and food, you can there's this actual new cookbook out that's the mushroom cookbook, and they show you how to make mushroom edibles, so like little gummies. How to make it, how to put it in your drink.
Has anybody smoked mushrooms okay, like we were all teenagers once. Anybody smoked magic mushrooms? Yes. I'll put my hand up.
No, but I've had the powder, like literally the end of the powder, and I've seen my friend just like put it on his bowl and just go at it, and I'm like, I'll watch this time. I'll wait and see. Let's see how this goes.
It didn't do anything.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it did anything for him. How about you? It just didn't.
No.
It's one of those things that needs to go through your digestive tract for it to really process the way you want it.
She has an interesting, like, that highlights the difference between like smoking DMT and doing ayahuasca, which is the same drug. It's the same effect that you're going for. the difference is DMT, your body breaks down super quick. That's the thing about hitting DMT as the businessman. Like DMT and ketamine were known as the businessman's high, lunchtime high, because you can get fucked out of your face and 10 minutes later you're fine. You walk away, there's no downside to it. Everything's cool. And as far as you're concerned, you've been gone for 500 years.
Yeah. Talk about a mini vacation.
Yeah, and then what ayahuasca actually is, it's the added alkalines. Okay, I've got to get this right.
It's the substance itself and
so
the
DMT you break. So what's in the plant material is the inhibitor to break down DMT. So it goes from a 15-minute, 10-minute high to 8 hours of tripping your nuts off. And it's an interesting one. I mean, the world of psychedelic. I have a soft spot for psychedelics, and it's really interesting, man. Stepping into that space, into the psychonaut world, is you discover that, okay, why does everybody who does ketamine have the same experience? Everybody who does DMT, yeah, you all have the same experience. You know, there's something very strange, but they're all. I don't know how to explain.
Well,
it.
you encounter almost otherworldly beings, like it's almost like you're being.
I mean, ketamine's about the fabric of society. I mean, the fabric of the world. It goes down to that cogs and real sort of weird shit, and then DMT is much more the spiritual reality of the world and that sort of multiverse disconnect, whereas ketamine brings you into the fine grain of reality that you're, but like the cogs of the, and I genuinely mean it as the cogs of reality that you exist within. When you go down the ketamine hole, everybody talks about it in the same way. It's that same experience. And the same goes for DMT. It's that my guide spirit came down and sat next to me and kind of showed me the path. And we went through however many different lifetimes together and understood what was going on, and this is the problems. But almost everybody will explain them the same way.
Yeah, Pete, you bringing up like the DMT experience. Whenever I hear people talking about DMT, it fascinates me because I've experienced ego death a few times myself, but only through acid. And it was
you gotta drop a lot of it, but man, ego death is an interesting experience.
It was legitimately like at very least 10.
Oh yeah,
and
we did an experiment.
I was in there. I was definitely in there. It was very interesting, but yeah, very just like you were saying, I got my own guide, and it was a very odd guide because it took the form of a friend that passed on within that year. And I got the added benefit of, I realized at the time it was, even within that whole me envisioning it, that it wasn't my friend, but in the same instance, it was comforting. Like I got a very comforting feeling, like this entity is a guide. It's trying to help me in my journey. And at the same time, I got to, I didn't really get to say goodbye to that friend before. And it was a really tragic passing. So I got to speak to that entity, we'll call it. And yeah, like I said, I knew it wasn't that person that passed on, but it gave me so much closure.
So he has a question. I mean, for the rest of the panel, I mean, how many of the rest of the panel have done psychedelics? I mean, yeah. I mean, Raptor, I've done, well, I mean, acid is just, at a point in time, acid was like, okay, yeah, let's just drop 10 tabs and go and have a laugh. Ego death. It's interesting because I would never say I've had a bad trip. Never. I actually deny the existence of anything of such a thing.
I always learned everything every single time.
there are intense trips, and I've been on a few that were fucking intense, but you walk out of them going, okay, kind of needed a little bit of a lesson there. There's something out of this. And I actually
You're
think what a
carrying
lot of
baggage.
people consider to be a bad trip is the ego death trip, when you suddenly drop enough acid where fucking reality just goes, boom,
Yeah.
and disappears.
If you
Hey?
thought melting walls was an issue, try
wait,
the breaking down of the very fabric of reality.
but
That,
that's okay.
I
So
would wish
now,
for melting walls. with
now
that
when you
deployment.
step now that when you're talking about that breakdown of the fabric of reality, when you step into ketamine and DMT, that's where those okay. So ketamine is a really interesting drug. It
felt like the other side of the wall of that DMT. When I hear people talk about it, it felt like I was so close to that, but I needed that
it's a
extra bit.
different. I mean, okay, so psychedelic experiences on weed. I've dropped enough hash in coffee before to trip fucking balls, and it's a different. Look, on acid, no matter how much I've taken, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging,
There's a
whatever, and
peak.
it's not. But you at whatever point you still know you're on a drug that's doing it.
Yes.
There's kind of that connect. Now, what I have always found that was always the difference between the synthetic psychedelic, and I mean, okay, acid is a derivative of
Ergot.
Argot, yeah, exactly. But so it has its roots in the natural world, but these psychedelics, like mushrooms, have a different psychedelic in terms of what I found really weird on the hash trip was it was really difficult to understand that this wasn't reality. It kind of, I found a lot more of the mushrooms and the cannabis, those ones when you take them to the extreme of psychedelia, your body, almost on the natural ones, can't tell that it isn't real anymore. The reality of it kicks in a lot harder. On acid, it's always been, I'm just tripping my tits off. Okay, I just kind of lie down somewhere. But you kind of get a little bit more convinced by it. It almost becomes a true hallucination, because acid is a pseudo hallucination. It's not if you've ever been ill enough to hallucinate when you're ill, those are true hallucinations where there is no barrier between reality and what you're seeing. I mean, as far as you're concerned, it is reality.
Yeah, I've always been, I've never experienced like seeing like gnomes, like on my way to the bathroom, but going to sleep with a fever dream, those are very intense
Do 4 days with no sleep. That's another way of experiencing true. When you dream, okay, so true hallucination
lack of sleep
in my
and lack of
mind
food.
is when you dream while you're awake. It's the same, it's that same feeling, because you can't tell the difference. There is no, and we played around with this shit at uni. I was like, fuck it, can we trip for 10 days solid? Like, no, you can't. It's impossible. Well, I say it's impossible, man. Okay, so day one, you drop one trip.
Not at the
Day
same
two,
level.
day
It's not always
two.
going to be the same like intensity, but like, you're seeing dragons and you're like floating up in the air on the first day, and then towards like day 9 or 8, you're like, oh yeah, there's the little underpants gnomes going across the floor.
But the scary thing is, so day one, you drop one trip. Day two, you drop 2, because you got to double up to be where you were on day 1. So day 3, you're already up to 4. Okay, so day 4, you're up to 8. Well, 6, and so it becomes 12, and then it becomes 24. By the end of a week, we were just like, we're not getting any sleep. That's all that's happening now. It's actually, and then that's why LSD is a non-addictive drug. Is you cannot chase it. You can't. Your body just tolerates into it. It's like, nah, it's not going to do. And to be honest, who's ever been addicted to tripping? I don't think it ever comes about.
I've had a friend who, I don't talk to him
Enjoyed it,
anymore
but not
because he does his
addicted
own.
to it.
Yeah, that friend I was mentioning, the reason I don't speak to him because he like literally did not want to deal with reality. That's the thing. that's not really of like addicted to tripping. It's just, he just didn't want to deal with reality.
It'll be
and like,
alcohol. It'll be anything.
exactly, and that could have been anything. And he abused it. He didn't take it in as a lesson. I mean, you could have fun with it. I don't like condoning those things to party with. From the experiences that I've had, I think there's so much more to, it's a teacher. In my philosophy of looking at it. I really fall back on what Paul Stamets goes on. It's like, no, this shouldn't be used in parties. This should be used by doctors and in a professional setting if we can. That being said, that's not the case. It is, right now in the world. So yeah, use it responsibly.
Everybody
Set
should
and
drop a
setting.
trip. Everybody should drop a trip once.
I think everyone
Um,
should, but it with the right set and
Mm.
setting, with the right environment, with the right people. If you're having a bad day, don't fucking do it.
It's
Because you're just gonna be thinking about that and it's gonna,
what
Yeah.
LSD is. It's a the point about it with the danger. Okay, the danger side of LSD or any psychedelic actually is it's an enhancer of whatever you're feeling at the time. And if you're feeling a little bit blue, it's going to really amp the blue up, but to the point where you can probably maybe figure out why you're feeling blue. There's sometimes like
Yeah.
it is
Like my experience.
I'm a militant atheist. But it's as close to spirituality as you get. I mean, like, yeah, I've seen God on LSD, but I'm quite happy to say to anybody, but that's the whole point is you've tripped hard enough to understand that there is more to this than what it does pull back the,
veil.
squeegee, the third eye of your reality, and you get to see what's actually going on.
Yeah, I was joking around with Eagle when I was telling him about that experience. I was like, most people, get a gentle eye opening of just like, okay, wake up, sweetie. It's time to get up for school. No, I got a punch in the face, like, get the fuck up and deal with your shit. I was not
It'll
only
teach you a
dealing with,
lesson. Yeah.
no, that's what I try to instill in people is like that this is a teacher. This is take it as a teaching moment, and you can grow so much more as a human being.
The
if you
best
really
trips
take
I've
it in.
ever had were always impromptu, not overly planned. Somebody would rock up and go, "Hey, I've got a stack of acid. Who wants to go tripping? Fuck it, let's go." My only advice to anybody doing it: everybody drop the same. Don't mix and match. Don't have. You can drop different quantities of the same acid, but
No
just make
hippie
sure.
flipping.
But just make sure everybody's dropping the same acid, and then everybody will
Oh,
be
I
on
see
the
what
same
you're saying.
vibe. It's I've definitely
see.
noticed that you can tell, like you go out and like somebody drop like Flying Keys, somebody else has done Mad Hatters, and you can the vibe is slightly different.
Yeah.
They're not quite on the same
Yeah, you
plug.
said it exactly. It's a whole vibe. And before I got into that whole scene, I never understood the term like, oh, I'm getting a weird vibe here. And then afterward, I was like, oh, now I'm way more in tune with my environment and the people around me.
And I mean, again, not trying to condone the use of illegal narcotics, but one of the downside, well, one of the aspects of LSD is it's introspective. You certainly look into yourself, and people can become quite freaky. Often you find social interaction while tripping your tits off is not something you want to do. What we used to do was called candy flipping. So it's dropped some MDMA, a gram of MDMA, and a trip. Things weren't made in halves. And that way, what you got was all of the extrovertedness and the beauty of the MDMA, which is still MDMA for men is the what's the right word to use as a phrase? Like the sexual equalizer. In terms of UK,
tones down the testosterone.
UK MDMA, ecstasy, is responsible for the demise of UK football hooliganism. I shit you not. I mean, it's almost correlation and causation. You plot the rise of MDMA and the demise in football hooliganism. It went from, I want to punch your fucking face into, come on, let's have a hug. It is a, and it's why I say it's for men in particular. It is a disconnect from male ego. You become in tune with feelings. It's a
That was my experience too.
really odd, and you suddenly saw like this big burly fucking bodybuilder crew kind of lot hugging each other. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? And you lot were all kicking off at us hippie crew for ages about this one love, and now you're like, did you realize this is a porno we're about to make? People pay good money for this.
When you go to those late night parties or clubs or raves, as my generation calls it. I had fun at raves, and some of the stuff you see is like, no, I'm glad I did not take what that guy took, because what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Ecstasy, amazing drug. I mean, fuck. But again,
it's definitely the source of some good stories.
It's a therapy drug. It
was used by therapists, literally.
The phrase I'm looking for, it's a genderfication. That's exactly what it is. It's a genderfication particularly for men, it's a genderfication. You can kind of like step out of the society's view of what men is supposed to be and get in touch with your fucking feelings.
Shit, all that stuff. Like saying like, oh, you ordered some water instead of a beer, you fucking Nancy. What are you fucking Nancy? Get the fuck out of here. That whole attitude. And whenever I had some a lot of friends like that, and whenever those fellas came around, it was just a whole different vibe. It's, oh man, you've been my best friend for years. Fucking love you. You're fucking dope, man. We're gonna be friends forever. You're gonna be at my wedding, man. Just like so funny.
Man,
so funny to watch, especially when you're sober. And you're hanging out with your friends like, oh, okay, yeah.
It's dangerous.
I love you guys too,
I've had that. The first pill I took was called this was I was 18 at the time, so that's oh shit, 29 years ago. Fuck.
Oh, did you just kill yourself? Damn.
Yeah. Coming in a gruesome age.
Was that 40s. The Cretaceous era, or?
Yeah. Light bulbs were an amazing invention. Electricity, the wheel, all incredible stuff. But they were called, I mean, they were just known as disco biscuits, man. And there were these brown, fairly big things. They were disco biscuits and rhubarbs and custards. So anybody who's from the UK from back in those days who will remember like rhubarbs and custards, like a pill that was red and yellow, rhubarb and custard, and it's a famous pudding over here, rhubarb and custards. And fuck, I can remember dropping that, and it's never again has that feeling ever been achieved. Never. The first time you drop good ecstasy, you will never experience that again. It's a one in a lifetime experience.
Take it
and the world would be a better place.
Make sure you're in a good place. And even if you're with some assholes, like, you'll make them love you. Like, just with your attitude, you're like, oh, okay, this guy was a little pissy, but no, he's cool. Whatever. He's buying us drinks.
And try as I might with my kids, I never got them to drop acid with me, as I said. I was like, come on, it's a lovely sunny day. Let's go out to the park. No, Dad. It's like, come on, you bastards.
It's I've never really had success with like tabs, dropping it on like little tabs of paper. That when I got those breakthroughs, it was always through, interestingly enough, they always put it on sweet tarts. I don't know if you have something similar over there, Pete, but it's exactly like the name says. It's sweet and then it goes tart, and it's just powdered sugar that's condensed in a little pill form.
Okay, yeah.
And it has a concave side, so a little divot on the other side, so it's perfect to just drop some liquid on there. And something about the sugar, I don't know, maybe it was just my saliva glands just really putting out more saliva, and maybe that with the acid, with that increase in acid, it increased the breakdown faster. So yeah, something about that. Even when I would keep the paper tab like in my mouth under my tongue for like hours, it was not the same. It was not
I
the
used
same
to.
as like putting it on, like you could put it on like a Sour Patch Kid too. I
Mm.
haven't tried that, but that sounds fucking good. I'm
Oh,
a
I've
fan
had
of
them
Sour
on
Patch.
liquid acid on wine gums or sour fruits, which is the same sort of thing. It's got like
Yeah.
sour outside to it.
With like
Yeah,
the sugar
we were
crystals and
I
citric
mean
acid.
statutes of limitation are way gone. We were
Mm.
at uni, we were a safe house. Fuck, that was so dodgy, man. And part of the advantage of being the safe house was, okay, so a magazine would arrive from Amsterdam, and the inside 4 pages, so like
Mhm.
what's it, 8 A4 pages,
Article 4,
trips,
page 20. Yes.
for LSD. And they were all just wrapped in, it was all done in tinfoil and whatnot. And our payment was tear a strip off and tell us what you think of them. So we were getting the super fresh acid as it arrived,
Yeah,
and just
fresh out the
ripping.
lab.
Oh man, we went fucking nuts on that stuff. It was beautiful. But being that
Yeah.
in that position was not nice. That safe house thing just got crazy after a while. It
No,
was like,
because you're always looking over your shoulder and you're like, who's that guy? And from the front, you know, that he's pretty big. I don't think I
one
could take
day
it. I'm by myself. Oh shit.
guy arrived at the front door with these 2 big bags and went, here, this is a delivery. 14 kilos of weed. I want to make clear this was 27 years ago. So fuck any legal or whatever. And it was in Portsmouth. We lived 2 streets away from the Portsmouth football ground. The same day that this guy delivers this shit, there's a fucking football match on, but half an hour after he's delivered it, I walk outside to get something, and it's just cop cars up and down the fucking street. I come back in and I'm like, whoa, the cops are
I'm
fucking
getting dinner.
everywhere. I see what everybody's like out the house, and then we're walking along and suddenly realize, oh no, hang on. There's a football game on today. That's why all the cops are here. It's not for us. And it was at that point I realized, nah, this ain't healthy, man. At that stage, when your
No.
paranoia is jacked up that high, it's like,
Yeah, man. I've
That's
had
the
so
shit.
many opportunities to be involved. I'll just say be involved in very similar activities. And while I did help some friends out when they're like, okay, we know you know some people. So I would just, okay, I'm gonna point you over here, but I am not touching anything. Anything that switches to each person is your whole thing. I don't fucking know you. And you go the other fucking way. You don't follow me. No. They're gonna be chasing you. I'm gonna be walking over here. Fuck off that way. But yeah, it's super uncomfortable, and you don't want to spend your life looking over your shoulder and wondering what's going to happen. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. I don't recommend it for anyone. I was friends with a bunch of people that were involved in those kinds of things, and you can imagine California, we got a certain border next to us, and there's some people that want to party around us too, up north and to the east. So there was definitely some stuff going around, and especially with cannabis. Even we got legalized for medical use in 96. So to it, while you could still get in trouble if you didn't have a medical permit, it was like a slap in the wrist unless you had like pounds and pounds and pounds. So there was a good couple of ounces at all times around
What's
me.
funny over
And
here is how you see, talking about that I just saw, I think popped up on my, I'm an old person. I still occasionally look at Facebook. And on my Facebook feed was, all right, everybody go and make your comments on this. And it's like a local UK bust where they kicked in somebody's door for 2 plants, because the neighbors reported a strong smell of cannabis. Thank fuck my neighbors don't report that shit. My neighbors
you
are
cover your
nose blind.
ass with your automation, like with your know-how in automation, and you use a carbon filter.
Yeah, but the carbon filter doesn't work when
There are leaks.
When my cousin Chip stands in the garden and fires one up, it's like, okay. I've had friends
that's why you
turn up.
get 2 carbon filters.
I've had
one for the tent and one for your blaze sessions.
He's had friends, well, they've had friends turn up from the station, which is half a mile down the road, going, yeah, no, we could smell you. We knew where we were going. It's like, okay, cool. But at the same time, the general public opinion, I think, is like, fuck it. What's the hassle? You've got more, and that's what you see in the comments on all this shit is like, okay, what about the real crime? You just spent how much busting this bullshit?
How many rapes were, were made or occurred on that day? Also, you can, bust little Johnny for growing in his grandma's attic or something.
Nice and easy, yeah. And remember that at all times, the insanity of living in this country is that the UK is the largest exporter of legal medicinal cannabis in the world. We export.
So you've mentioned that before, you've mentioned that before, Pete, as like a little side note, and then we moved on with the conversation. And this was, I think it was just us talking.
It was GW Pharmaceuticals. They have a huge grow operation in Kent, which is just down the road from me. And it's grown legally under license and the license they got was because it's medicinal and it's a medicinal product, yet the government refuses to acknowledge that it has medicinal qualities, which is like, hang on a second. And here comes the tinfoil hat brigade thing, is that Theresa May, who used to be a prime minister, her husband is one of the shareholders in GW Pharmaceuticals, which doesn't really go down too well. I will say, for anybody who happens to be living in the UK, if you ever got bust for growing cannabis and your argument was it's medicinal, your key witness that you want to call to the stand is the head medical advisor for GW Pharmaceuticals, because the only reason they have a license is on the argument that it is medicinal. And therefore, Your Honor, the reason why I'm growing it and it's medicinal is because the reason you gave those fuckers a license for it is because it's medicinal. And if their chief medical officer can't argue the point that it is medicinal, can you please retract their license? So yeah, that's the key witness you want to call to the stand, is the company that's got the license to argue the fact that that's why they had the license, which is why you're allowed to do it.
Damn. That's right in your face.
Yeah, I think Cascading Grown's coming about living on an island. Yep. And I'm sure Duckweed can appreciate that as well. It's like, what, 8 hours drive? How many times do you want me to go around the fucking island? Yeah. Okay, so that's 4 times round. How much more do you want me to do?
Yeah, man. Fucking crazy.
Yeah, but you can only drive 25. No.
Yeah, but at the same time in America, 100-year-old house is considered old. Over here, it's still a new build, and it's like, hey, it's a fucking new architecture on the end of the road. What's going on here?
What are you talking? What are you talking about? It was renovated 75 years ago. That's top of the line. Top
up
of
to
the
date, brand new. You know, what the fuck?
Tip top.
I mean, to put things in context, there's a pub in my village that's 600 years old. You know, it's the original pub. It's still there.
Is it owned by the family, or was it just
No,
switch around by managers?
Switch around by manager over time. And we have in the village, we have something called the Cage, which is an old oak tree that actually has a prison cage built into it, where they used to put the drunks would be thrown into that on a village night. And then on Halloween, they open it up and, you know, the kiddies all run into it. It's small. I mean, it's very small. You wouldn't want to spend a night in there in that drunk tank. I tell you what, it'd be very unpleasant. But yeah, our village is mentioned in the Doomsday Book and shit like that. It's, yeah. That's the funny thing about living in this country is the age of the places that you live in, and really old spots.
A lot of history.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of history.
I mean, I'm one of the. I'm fortunate enough to have been allowed to still go up the Tower of Pisa when it was. Public could still go up it. You can't walk up it anymore, and that's incredible. When you look at those. I mean, that is something that you just don't get. You haven't been around long enough. I mean, genuinely, you haven't been around long enough. It's when you see these old staircases, stone staircases have been worn away through the centuries of people walking up and down them. And you realize, fuck me, that's a lot of foot traffic that's gone past here.
What can't you go up anymore?
The Leaning Tower of Pisa, you can't go up it anymore. You're not allowed to walk up it. It was weird enough at the time to walk up it because as you go around, you're like leaning this way, leaning that way. And when you get to on the edge, back in the day when you could still get up, you'd literally be standing with your back up against the wall trying to hold on. I mean, it leant over at a decent enough angle. They're like, this could fall off.
Cool.
Yeah, that's I actually had this big trip planned. I've always wanted to do a Mediterranean trip in general, but my latest trip was supposed to be out to Japan. And I was going to do something very similar, just, you know, basic touristy shit, you know, go visit the temples and the landmarks and just get immersed in the culture as much as possible and their history.
I want to go fly fishing in Japan. That's what I want to do. I've got, for me, Japan.
What area?
The big cities hold no interest. I want to go out into the countryside, and in particular, I want to go and fly fish in the countryside. In Japan, they have a traditional fly fishing called tenkara, which is their style of fly fishing. But I would just love to go over and just do, you know, regular fly fishing.
They have some of the most amazing koi farms as well.
Oh yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Worth thousands, those fish.
They don't taste good. I can't eat them though.
No.
I don't think they eat them.
You just sell them and you pay for your vacation.
Pretty much.
Well, it's carp, and carp are carp are bottom feeding fish. Now in Europe, what you find is carp are eaten in Europe. And in fact, in carp lakes in the UK, there was, this sounds bad, but there was a real problem with Eastern European immigrants just cleaning out the carp pools, because in Europe, they eat these, in England, you don't eat carp. They're caught, they're returned. But in Europe, they catch them and eat them. It's a difference. And what you have to do, you kind of have to run them in. Okay, one way of doing it was you would catch carp, you put them in your bathtub and fill the bathtub with water so that they swim around in fresh water with no food, nothing, no mud in it whatsoever for at least 24 hours. Otherwise, the flesh, like we were talking the other day, well, so yesterday, I think it was on. Yeah, the difference between river caught, I'll eat river caught trout. I won't really eat lake caught trout. There's a big difference between those two. River or lake caught trout are
flowing water,
pellet fed, and you can taste it. They taste muddy almost. They've got that kind of earthy, kind of muddy taste to them. The flesh isn't as meaty. It's a lot fattier on lake trout. Whereas a river trout sitting in the stream, constantly working against that river, that flow,
The current.
it's much more muscular. Yeah, much more solid. A 2-pound river trout will give you a fight of a lifetime. It really will. I mean, that thing will just take off
That's
like a
2
fucking
pounds of
bullet.
muscle.
Mm.
Yeah.
2
That you're
pound
just fighting.
lake,
Get a
4,
6 or 7
6
pounder
pound lake trout. It's just a slow kind of, I'll get you at the end.
Yeah, we don't have lakes. We just have rivers, streams, and beaches. So most of our fishes are pretty dang nice.
Mm.
We have this dish that's called bacon shark. Usually get it at beaches. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, it's like fried shark with a sort of fried dough. All your greens, lettuce, cucumbers, shadow benny sauce, pineapple.
Do you like flour the shark or do you just fry it with? Okay, so it's battered.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's seasoned with our local green seasoning, and then they flour it and fry it. And then
So it's dredged, not battered.
Good stuff, man. Do it like tail, do it like alligator tail.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, yo. If you ask me, it's pretty similar to catfish.
Huh.
Yeah.
What kind of shark? Tiger shark?
Usually we get nurse sharks.
Blue?
Nurse sharks or like
Nurse
sand sharks.
Huh, sand sharks.
Yeah.
Sand shark. Did you say a sand shark?
Yeah.
Sand shark's good eating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Pete, you were talking about cleaning stuff out. The Puerto Ricans do that with the land crab. They catch the land crab, and then they
we have crabs.
You have land, yeah, I bet you do. And they feed them oatmeal. They feed them oatmeal to clean them out.
Oh, that makes sense. You're feeding it fiber to clean out the intestinal tract.
Same thing. If you catch a catfish, if you can get a catfish, you have a big enough container, or a carp. But I wouldn't eat no carp because they're a bottom feeder. But so is catfish. But some catfish taste better
than lobster.
Others. I mean, you're not going to get no blue.
And shrimp and crab.
If you got water outside, if you got like a kid's pool, and you can put fresh water in that's like out of the stream, and then throw a bunch of oatmeal in there and feed it, the catfish will clean out too. A lot of fish will clean out like that.
Well, usually here we just, as soon as we catch fishes, we tend to clean them, cut them out, clean them. So when we get home, it's straight in the pot, man.
But then the Puerto Ricans take the land crab and put it in the water for 45 minutes, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You gotta cook them 45 minutes to be done. I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, tastes terrible, man. It was like leather. I'm like, that thing's done in like 5 or 10 minutes as soon as it changed color.
I'm so grossed out when people eat shrimp when it's not deveined. I'm like, oh. Enjoy.
If they only knew. It's fine.
Enjoy your shit too. Enjoy your shit.
You guys mentioned Japan. I got a chance to be in Nagata for a while, and then I went to Kaido for a while, and I got to eat a lot of stuff across Japan. And I would say that's one of the places that really opened up my palate as a young person to, eating things that I didn't have a choice about, and then learning to appreciate what other people ate. And then also like.
Yeah, Vietnam's another country that will do that to you. If you travel there, be prepared to don't ask what it is, ask what it's called.
And then as a kid, we ate a lot of different animals, so we always used the trick of mild acid.
So go ahead, Genetic.
Oh, I'm sorry. As a kid, we would hunt and whatnot. So if you had something gamey, like, that would have literally that gamey flavor because you had an older animal, that was where grandma would always teach us to use, a little bit of milk or buttermilk, something acidic. Basically, she would, to react out some of that flavor. And it would improve it. I mean, that's for sure. Grandma knew what she was doing.
Always.
Yes, she did.
I mean, that's like a really old dish, like milk poached haddock. It's a haddock that was poached in milk. That's an old one. You don't see that very often these days. I mean, I remember my grandparents having that for breakfast almost every morning. It would be like haddock and in poached milk. Well, poached in milk.
Gamey stuff. Yeah, man.
Well, I tell you what, guys, we've been going for what, 2 and a bit hours. So
Yeah.
I don't
I
really
even got a nap in. Very productive day.
I don't necessarily want to turn this into another like a 7-hour session as of last night.
Yeah,
But yeah, I tell you what, if people want to hang around and stay in chat, that's great. We can have a bit of a smoke session. And anybody in chat at the moment, I don't know, I'm going to try this out, but for our little, if you're enjoying this and whatnot, sorry, this is the shameless plug part of the whole show. But if you are enjoying the show and, you know, would like to, I guess, show your support or whatnot, but we have a little Patreon page going. And what we want to have is after the usual little session, we'll have like another hour or so. And when we just run these things for normally an hour, this has gone a bit longer than normal. But at the end of it, if you're a Patreon subscriber at, I think I put it at the $5 level or whatever, you can jump in and join us and the panel afterwards.
That's very reasonable, Pete. $5 is very reasonable to be able to get a consultation. Think about how much consultation fees cost.
Yeah, and you can jump into the after session. It won't be going out live on YouTube. This is where we just sit around afterwards and talk shit, and you know, whatever gets said gets said. It doesn't go out live. You can interact, and I think at the $3 level, which was just the minimum that they recommended, nothing more than that. But there you can post us questions, and we'll try to get them all answered on the shows. So I guess the only difference is $2, and you can ask live and get it there and then. But yeah, it'd be great. If you want to, it's up to you guys. Absolutely don't mind. The content still comes out for free. And don't forget, tonight Cascadian is going to be on the
Eagles.
Talking shit with Eagles.
Fucking talking shit.
Yeah, we're gonna get the right around. Fucking talking, not fucking Eagle shit with talking, but fucking talking shit.
Get your fuck straight.
So don't forget to tune in and watch that. There's also Fumidor and the Flavors in terms of the YouTube channel, but I think it's now the Chronic Table is like the name of the show, or there's a bunch of those.
This is the Buds and Brews.
Yeah,
Yeah, Brews and Buds section of the week.
Yep.
So I guess you can get crunk and look at Cascadia and Fumi at the same time.
Yeah.
So don't forget to
Pete. Well, you can watch
tune
Pete
into
have
those.
his breakfast beer with us.
As per usual, 5 a.m. every morning.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit harsh on a Monday morning, but hey, you know, it still goes down. And yeah, follow, like, subscribe to us. And if you know, there were 37 people currently watching, 23 likes. Yeah, maybe we can make that 26 plus the one that thumbs down. Fine, whatever. But that would be great. Yeah, that proves it's a reality show. You know, it's not all just thumbs up. Occasionally, somebody doesn't like what we're saying, but that can't.
They just missed the like button. That's all. They got ahead of the Brews and Buds. And they came here, said, I got nothing better to do. I was crack one open.
Yeah, the pre-sesh, exactly. The warm-up, get you going. This
And
is
I'll
where you
say
get to
whether
watch
you thumbs up or
Raptor.
thumbs down. I appreciate whether you thumbs up or thumb down. The engagement's the important part. So thanks for that person stopping by either way.
Oh no, I tell you what, the thumbs down, as I said, it actually proves that it's not an algorithm just going thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. You know, it's kind of nice to get the thumbs down too.
You mean my 26 profiles didn't go through? I thought that would help.
So EO show, Embracing Organic show, it's another one to follow. Obviously follow us, like and subscribe. If everybody went out and subscribed to everybody else's channels, it would be great. Our little community, we all just support the content makers. The
world will be a better place.
Exactly. Everybody drop a trip. Drop some acid, tune in, drop out. I can understand how there's
Unless you have
more to this
schizophrenia,
reality.
then don't do that.
No, unless you're colorblind, if you're colorblind, do not do microdosing, because oddly enough, the traces So a phenotypic trait, if you are colorblind, is if you do microdosing, is you will get traces for days afterwards.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, interesting.
So it's an odd thing if you are colorblind. Yeah, microdosing will fuck with you for a little bit longer than if you're not.
That must make for an interesting drive to work.
And this comes from there were some really good shows on YouTube.
Looks like GMF has a
expansion of
little
your
bit
mind
of color blindness, and he's already ahead of the party game with his nice, nice.
It's all shades of purple, people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to everybody in chat, thank you very much. And we will see you next week. Hopefully, Nicholas Watt saying bullshit on the colorblind and microdose. Excellent. I will I know somebody you need to speak to because their research
Noted.
was noted. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Noted.
How much
I'll
of a
put that on the
microdose? You know, what is the microdosing quantity? But yeah, I must remember what the article was. Well, not the article, was the guy who did it. Really good piece on the whole bit. But yeah, I'll find it out. Anyway,